Chapter 908. Qin Wendian naturally knew about the conversation between Di Tian's clone and the old man. His true body had already undergone nirvanic rebirth and their minds were connected, yet they didn't interfere with each other's cultivation. Qin Wendian was still trapped in the cavern. He started to study the divine inscriptions in the underground palace, starting from the path he took to enter. This underground palace didn't seem to be dangerous at all, but its very existence was already fatal, able to trap people to death, causing them to feel despair. In fact, there weren't any clues left behind, only the corpses of the ancestors, causing one to feel a chill in their hearts. If there was a clue, it would be the divine inscriptions that covered the entire underground palace. Qin Wendian could only guess from this point of view. He had no other choice, or he would only be waiting for death. Qin Wendian entered the underground palace again, advancing step by step. At the same time, in a faraway particle world, Qin Wendian was inscribing all the divine inscriptions Di Tian saw on a piece of paper, restoring it to its original state. His true body and Di Tian's clone advanced together, trying to find a chance of survival to unravel the secret of this underground palace. Time flowed by bit, Qin Wendian slowly advanced through the underground palace. Xiaoling Yue was quietly leaning against the wall in front of him. Her soft and beautiful figure was filled with curves, and her arms were crossed in front of her chest, exuding an alluring aura. However, Qin Wendian had no other thoughts in his mind, he had no time to admire her charm. After a long time, Xiaoling Yue finally couldn't help but ask, "What are you doing?" Qin Wendian inclined his head, staring at Xiaoling Yue. "I can't just wait for death in this underground palace. I want to see if there are any secrets hidden within the divine inscriptions." A rare smile appeared on Xiaoling Yue's face. "I'm not proficient in divine inscriptions, I don't understand them. I hope you will be able to do it." "I will do my best." Qin Wendian nodded. After that, he continued to observe. In the cavern that had 5 paths leading to it, rumbling sounds rang out unceasingly as an expert howled, "Damn it, what are these stone walls made of exactly? They can't even move a single inch. Don't waste your energy. Even immortal kings are trapped here. If you can blast a way out, wouldn't immortal kings be nothing but a joke?" Someone spoke. "We can't just wait for death." As the roars rang out, the rumbling sounds continued, but it was useless. The toughness of the cave was beyond imagination. Not to mention creating a way out, it was impossible to even leave a mark on the cave. Only the echoes of the roars reverberated in their ears. As time flowed by, the tyrannical emotions in the air grew stronger and stronger. Qin Wendian arrived at a fork in the road. He stared at the 5 different paths, and there were geniuses in each of them, all of them coldly staring at Qin Wendian. A proud son of heaven slowly walked forward, step by step towards Qin Wendian. His aura bloomed, as if he was filled with intense resentment. He walked up to Qin Wendian and said coldly, "Don't you think you should pay for what you've done?" Quite a few people turned their gazes over, staring at Qin Wendian as though they were watching a show. Qin Wendian inclined his head, staring at the genius before him as he coldly laughed, "What price do I have to pay? You brought us here, what price do you think I have to pay?" That genius had a malevolent expression on his face. The baleful aura that he had been hiding during these few days all surfaced on his face. "Do I know you?" Qin Wendian stared at him. "Have I spoken to you before? Why did I ask you to follow me in? Are you despicable? Even a clay figurine would have 3 points of fire." Qin Wendian was provoked time and time again, how could he not feel resentment in his heart? Everyone followed him involuntarily. Other than Xiaoling Yue, Qin Wendian, the others followed him unwillingly. He didn't even know who they were. But now, all of them were pointing their spears at him. What a great joke. Boom! A destructive aura suddenly erupted. The genius in front of him blasted out a terrifying fist of darkness. The fist was filled with corrosive black flames. It was as if coming into contact with even the slightest bit of it would cause one to pay a heavy price. If one was hit by this fist, one's entire body would probably be destroyed by the corrosive flames. Boom! Qin Wendian stomped on the ground. Instantly, a fearsome astral light enveloped his body as a fearsome gigantic battle spear appeared, piercing out frenziedly, clashing against the fist light of his opponent. That genius roared in rage. He released his constellation, causing the entire sky to be plunged into darkness as destructive black flames danced wildly in the air. Qin Wendian took another step forward, causing the diagram on the ground to light up. A terrifying prison appeared beneath his opponent's feet, wanting to trap him within. This prison shone with boundless golden light, as though it was indestructible. Die! Qin Wendian waved his hands as terrifying battle spears and spears pierced through the air from all directions, aiming for the prison. The countenance of that genius turned ashen. At this moment, this underground palace had transformed into Qin Wendian's battlefield. He could borrow the power of the divine inscriptions on the ground to engage in a frenzied battle. The constellation of that genius manifested as boundless corrosive black flames blasted out in all directions, unceasingly destroying the attacks aimed at him. However, as Qin Wendian continued waving his hands, it seemed as though his attacks would never stop. Every time he waved his hands, a majestic attack would be unleashed, as though he wanted to annihilate everything in his path. Puchi! A piercing sound rang out, the shoulder of that genius was pierced by a battle spear. Fresh blood instantly dyed his body red, and his countenance was as pale as paper. However, the countless battle spears didn't seem to stop. The spectators all frowned. Qin Wendian could borrow the power of the divine inscriptions here to fight. He was like a fish in water, he didn't need to expend much energy in order to unleash a frenzied attack. The chaotic chi flow stopped. Qin Wendian waved his hands as the prison dissipated. He coldly stared at his opponent as he spoke, "Scram. If you dare to be so despicable again, I'll kill you." That genius turned ashen, he rubbed his injured shoulder and coldly glanced at Qin Wendian before turning and departing the area. Qin Wendian swept his gaze over to the experts here. After which, he lifted his feet and walked towards the left, continuing to study the divine inscriptions in this underground palace. Xian Xing and the other geniuses who were proficient in divine inscriptions also did the same thing as Qin Wendian, starting to study the divine inscriptions in this underground palace. Just like what Qin Wendian had thought, these divine inscriptions were the only clues left in this underground palace. He could only start from the divine inscriptions, or he would only be waiting for death. In the blink of an eye, 3 months passed. Many people in the outside world were extremely anxious. The son of the Xian Emperor and the daughter of the Shao Emperor had already been missing for 3 months. Not only that, there were several other rankers on the Immortal Ascension rankings who had also disappeared together with them. During these 3 months, Qin Wendian studied all the divine inscriptions in the underground palace. Di Tian had also inscribed them down in a particle world far away. At this instant, Di Tian's gaze was fixated ahead as his heart trembled with shock. What appeared before his eyes was a three-dimensional diagram that was formed from countless divine inscriptions. This diagram actually formed a unique shape that was extremely difficult to see when one was trapped in the underground palace. But after the divine inscriptions were all drawn out, it was so clear that it was imprinted in his eyes. This was a gigantic palm imprint. The divine inscriptions on the 5 paths intertwined together to form 5 fingers, and the path at the very front was an arm. At this moment, Qin Wendian thought back to the diagram in his mind as a hint of comprehension appeared in his heart. So it turned out that the moment he entered this underground palace, there was already a hint that this diagram was in the shape of a hand. Emperor Yi's ultimate art was none other than God's hand. What sort of secrets were hidden within? At this moment, a silhouette appeared before Di Tian. It was none other than that old man. He stared at the diagram and spoke, "I was wondering why you would ask about Emperor Yi. This palm imprint is extremely profound. Did your original body obtain the ultimate art of Emperor Yi?" "Nope." Di Tian shook his head. "It's just that in a ruin left behind by Emperor Yi, I managed to draw out all the divine inscriptions there. That's the diagram before us." "Oh." An expression of interest appeared on the old man's face as he smiled. Seems like your original body has some good fortune. However, it's not so easy to comprehend the ultimate art of Emperor Yi. I naturally understand. Di Tian nodded. The diagram before him seemed to be separated from each other. Each of the divine inscriptions here could be a combat-type divine inscription, but there were also a myriad of combinations. Right now, all the divine inscriptions in the underground palace were intertwined together, transforming into this incomparably complicated diagram that actually formed the shape of a palm imprint. Take your time to comprehend it then. The old man spoke. After that, his silhouette flickered as he vanished from sight once more. The ultimate art of Emperor Yi, God's hand, wasn't an elemental attack. It was a truly supremely powerful art. If Di Tian was lucky enough to comprehend it, he naturally wouldn't mind it. Naturally, the old man could also tell that this palm imprint wasn't the true ultimate art of Emperor Yi. There was a very high possibility that this palm imprint was just a guide for people to learn it. In the underground palace, Qin Wendian sat cross-legged. His thoughts were focused on Di Tian. This way, he would be able to see everything that Di Tian saw. Both of them were trying to comprehend the secret behind this palm imprint. Not far away from Qin Wendian, Xiaolin Yue was still quietly leaning against the wall, observing Qin Wendian's actions. After he walked through all 5 paths, he actually sat down to cultivate. Could it be that he had discovered something? Although Xiaolin Yue was powerful, she wasn't proficient in divine inscriptions. Hence, she could only observe the state of these people who were proficient in divine inscriptions and see if they could unravel the secret behind this underground palace. If they could really unravel the secret, they might really have a chance to enter the true Emperor Palace of Emperor Yi. She believed that the Emperor Palace they saw in the City of Ancient Emperors was definitely a real existence. Since there was an underground palace here, there was a high possibility that it was a passageway. From a certain perspective, Qin Wendian's words might be correct. This underground palace was merely a test left behind by Emperor Yi. And this test was extremely difficult, to the extent that even immortal kings died here. Naturally, all of this was merely Xiaolin Yue's conjecture. As for the true ending, no one would know before they unravel the secret behind this underground palace. Chapter 909. Qin Wendian seemed to have entered a meditative state, completely immersed in his comprehension. Since he had already drawn out this gigantic palm imprint in a 3-dimensional form, there was a high possibility that the secret of the underground palace would be contained within this gigantic palm imprint. If he could comprehend the secret within, there might be a chance for him to leave this place. However, this gigantic palm imprint was incomparably profound, containing countless transformations and was extremely difficult to comprehend. Qin Wendian told Di Tian to stop his cultivation because he hoped that he would be able to unravel it. In the underground palace, Xia Qianhan walked to the side of Xiaolin Yue and asked, "Lin Yue, it's true that there's no way to find the exit here. Why do you still want to protect that person?" Xiaolin Yue stared at Qin Wendian. She didn't look at Xia Qianhan as she replied, "Now is the time for everyone to work together to think of a way to leave this place. Don't keep thinking about such things. Even if I vent my hatred on Qin Wendian, so what? Can I find the exit?" "Well said." A voice drifted over, only to see Xian Xing slowly walking over. His eyes were dazzling, gleaming with a mysterious light. He was the same as Qin Wendian. He had already seen through all the divine inscriptions in this underground palace. With his mystic eyes, no divine inscriptions would be able to escape his eyes. But so what? Even if he could unravel the divine inscriptions one by one, he wouldn't be able to unravel the secret within the entire underground palace. However, Xiaolin Yue, are you really so magnanimous? The others can say that they followed you guys in, but you were the one who lured him into the Emperor Palace. Don't you have any resentment at all? Xian Xing stared into Xiaolin Yue's eyes. Those sharp eyes of his seemed to be able to see through people. This Xiaolin Yue was truly a character. If it was him, he wouldn't be able to do what Xiaolin Yue did, not showing any resentment on the surface and even protecting Qin Wendian. "Lin Yue, say something. I can kill him for you. How about it?" Xian Xing laughed. From the moment he entered, he already couldn't stand Qin Wentian. Let alone now that they were stuck here, his hatred for Qin Wentian had already accumulated to a certain degree. Xiao Lingyue glanced at Xian Xing as she coldly spoke, "My matters have nothing to do with you. You better find a way out yourself." "Ha, Xiao Lingyue, we're already trapped here. Why must you be so cold? If we really die here, we can be considered to have lived and died together." Xian Xing laughed insolently. After which, his eyes stared in the direction of Qin Wentian as a cold light flashed in his eyes. This Qin Wentian was truly so carefree, to think that he could still cultivate in peace. "Since you have so much time on your hands, why don't you go and comprehend the divine inscriptions in the underground palace and see if there are any secrets hidden within?" Xiao Lingyue's voice was as cold as ever. In this underground palace, she was like a blind person, helpless to do anything. The only people she could rely on were these geniuses who were proficient in divine inscriptions. This was also the reason why she had always protected Qin Wentian. She naturally could tell that Qin Wentian's attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions were extremely high. If a 9th-level ascendant fought against him here, there was a high probability that the 9th-level ascendant would be defeated. There was already a precedent of this before. "Humph," Xian Xing coldly snorted. "Comprehend the secrets hidden within." Did Xiao Lingyue think that he didn't want to? However, she had no clue at all. She didn't know where to start. Glancing at the corpse in front of him, his gaze turned even colder when he stared at Qin Wentian. "Xian Xing, should we?" Besides Xian Xing, a few geniuses from the Twin Stars Alliance walked over, making a slashing motion at Qin Wentian. "There's no rush. In any case, we're already trapped here and won't be able to escape. If we kill him now, wouldn't we have one less person to accompany us?" Xian Xing seemed to have changed his mind. He wasn't in a hurry to kill Qin Wentian. He could already feel the taste of torment, and this feeling wasn't good at all. If he killed Qin Wentian so early, wouldn't Qin Wentian be spared from such torment? In the following days, to the geniuses who were trapped here, every single day was filled with agony. There was no way out, no chance of survival, no motivation for them to cultivate. Even if they broke through to Immortal Foundation, it was useless. Even immortal kings died here. What could Immortal Foundation change? This underground palace was like a devil's curse, perplexing everyone. There was no way to undo it, causing the emotions of the geniuses to grow more and more violent. It was as though there would come a day when they would lose control of their emotions. Qin Wentian still sat there cross-legged, as though he would never move. On his body, there seemed to be a layer of armor shimmering with light. That was the Fiend God Body Refinement Art. The Fiend God Body Refinement Art used the power of divine inscriptions to temper one's fleshly body, and it required the Spirit Refinement method as a supplement. Qin Wentian had been comprehending the giant palm imprint for a very long time. He could faintly sense that there were some similarities between the giant palm imprint and the Fiend God Body Refinement Art. It was just that the Fiend God Body Refinement Art was used to temper one's Fiend God body, while the giant palm imprint was purely offensive. However, if one were to comprehend it in this direction, there might be an effect. He cultivated the Spirit Refinement method, he had an innate advantage. Qin Wentian even used the 10,000 Laws record as a supplement to his cultivation. In the illusory dreamscape, he seemed to be immersed in the endless flow of divine inscriptions on the giant palm imprint. He couldn't see the specific divine inscriptions, but he was within it. The divine inscriptions on the giant palm imprint enveloped him, and it was as though the divine inscriptions were a complete entity, capable of a myriad of transformations, possessing an unfathomable might. The path of cultivation is to go from simplicity to complexity, and from complexity to simplicity. Qin Wentian silently mused. With regards to this point, he had already comprehended it a very long time ago. This was the case for any type of energy. Starting from the basics, from simplicity to complexity. After mastering it, no matter how complex an innate technique was, it would be able to be unleashed in an instant. It was as though it was a matter of a single thought, and with a wave of one's hand, one would be able to unleash a powerful attack that was previously so difficult to comprehend. The comprehension of energy was just so profound. Qin Wendian was thinking that at this moment, he hadn't reached the stage where he could comprehend from complexity to simplicity. With regards to the comprehension of this giant palm imprint, he should start from the simplest. Spirit refinement method. Qin Wendian drew in a deep breath. It was time for the spirit refinement method to unleash its profundities. He was prepared to start from the very beginning. The first step was to mimic all of the divine inscriptions on the giant palm imprint. Maybe he might be able to return to simplicity, but this process was something that could never be skipped. Cultivation was just like this, one had to take each and every step, there were no shortcuts. Qin Wendian had no distractions in his heart, fully immersing himself in his own cultivation. Hence, he couldn't sense the flow of time, nor could he sense the baleful aura of the other heavens chosen. He had something to do, and since he was so focused, he had no concept of time at all. However, the others had nothing to do, and every second was excruciating. Within the underground palace, the various heavens chosen walked back and forth. There were people who tried to blast every corner of the palace, but to no avail. They couldn't even move the slightest bit. There were no openings here, they simply didn't exist. Almost everyone who passed by Qin Wendian, regardless of whether they were from the Twin Stars Alliance or the Shao sect, would all stare coldly at him. The coldness in their eyes grew increasingly intense as time passed. They had no way to blame themselves for being rash and impulsive, following Qin Wendian into the palace. They could only blame Qin Wendian for his arrogance, bringing them into such a desperate situation. This was the nature of humans. If looks could kill, it was unknown how many times Qin Wendian would have died already. Shaolin Yue, you are truly patient. Xian Xing once again came here, staring at Shaolin Yue as he stared at Qin Wendian. Shaolin Yue's heart trembled slightly. Patience? His patience was slowly whittling away with each passing day. From the time they entered this underground palace, it had already been 5 months. They didn't cultivate, nor did they improve. Every day, they spent their time in torment, searching and searching. Eventually, they would feel despair. His patience is even better than yours. Xian Xing's sinister gaze once again turned to Qin Wendian. He couldn't help but admit that Qin Wendian's patience was the best out of all of them. He still wanted to see Qin Wendian enduring the torment. However, Qin Wendian didn't. He was immersed in his own world every day, quietly cultivating. It was like he wasn't trapped here but came here to cultivate. Such calmness and patience caused even Xian Xing to feel a little jealous. Is he waiting for others to find a way out for him? Xian Xing coldly spoke. At this moment, a figure walked towards Qin Wendian. Upon seeing this, Xian Xing frowned as a cold smile flickered in his eyes. Finally, someone couldn't endure it any longer. At this moment, Qin Wendian was at a critical juncture. He could already form all the divine inscriptions he wanted. In the illusory space, he stood in the center of the gigantic palm imprint and stretched out his palm. Numerous runic inscriptions flowed as boundless divine energy appeared on his palm. As the runic inscriptions flowed, it felt as though in an instant, his palm was about to transform. As long as he willed it, he could create countless transformations in a short period of time, truly unfathomable. Qin Wendian retracted his palm. He stood in the center of the gigantic palm imprint, and when he stared at it again, he seemed to have gained a hint of comprehension. It was as though he could see the divine inscriptions within the gigantic palm imprint with his naked eyes, transforming unceasingly. This feeling was extremely mystical, he couldn't explain it clearly. But at this moment, Qin Wendian suddenly felt a terrifying sense of danger descending upon him from the outside world. His eyes abruptly opened only to see a blood-colored palm imprint blasting towards him. This terrifying palm imprint seemed to be able to crush him into meat paste with a single palm strike. Qin Wendian didn't even have the time to see who the attacker was. Qin Wendian hurriedly gathered all his strength and blasted out with his palms. Terrifying runic light circulated within his palms, directly colliding with the blood-colored palm imprint. In just an instant, Qin Wentian's body was flung through the air, directly slamming into the wall behind him. A terrifying surge of energy gushed into his body, causing him to groan in misery as he coughed out a mouthful of blood. His countenance paled. Inclining his head, Qin Wendian stared ahead. Many people were staring in his direction, all of them had cold expressions on their faces, filled with baleful intent. This included Xiaolin Yue. She was also watching, but this time around, she didn't stop them. Qin Wendian's lips curled up in a demonic smile. He was doing his best to comprehend the mysteries of the underground palace while these people had nothing better to do. Yet their hatred for him grew stronger and stronger, to the point where they wanted to kill him. How ridiculous was this? Chapter 9-10. Seems like you guys are truly waiting for death here. Qin Wendian swept his gaze over everyone. The aura of the genius who attacked him earlier was extremely violent. He laughed in disdain. Before I die, I will take your life first. Take my life? A look of ridicule appeared on Qin Wendian's face. You guys are waiting for death while I'm here alone, trying to comprehend the mysteries of the underground palace. What's even more lamentable is that trash who has nothing better to do actually want to vent their anger on me. How laughable is this? If I die, I'm afraid all of you can only wait for my death. Boasting shamelessly. That person's countenance was cold, staring at Qin Wendian as he continued stepping out. Stay your hand. A melodious voice rang out. Xiaolin Yue stepped out, her beautiful eyes staring at Qin Wendian as she asked, Qin Wendian, did you discover something? I've always been trying to comprehend the mysteries of the underground palace. What are these people doing? Qin Wendian swept his gaze over everyone. Xiaolin Yue, do you really believe his words? Only to see Xian Xing also slowly walking up, staring at Qin Wendian. What can you possibly comprehend? There are countless divine inscriptions in the underground palace, with a myriad of transformations. Even with my mystic eyes, I can only unravel them one by one. I have no way to unravel the mysteries within. What qualifications do you have to boast shamelessly? Frog at the bottom of a well. Qin Wendian glanced at Xian Xing. Rumbling sounds rang out as boundless runic light circulated in his palms. After which, he blasted out with his palms as an incomparably terrifying gigantic palm imprint appeared in the air. Within that gigantic palm imprint, there were actually countless divine inscriptions within. Not only that, Xian Xing felt a sense of familiarity towards this palm imprint. Even if you can't do it, don't assume that others can't as well. You think your attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions are very high and others are inferior to you? You simply don't know the immensity of the heavens and earth and are short-sighted. How lamentable. Qin Wendian mocked. Xiaolin Yue's beautiful eyes flashed with a bright light. Although she wasn't proficient in divine inscriptions, she could sense the profoundness behind the palm imprint Qin Wendian blasted out earlier. It was extremely similar to the divine inscriptions she saw in the underground palace. Xian Xing's expression darkened as he stared coldly at Qin Wendian. After a moment of silence, he opened his mouth. I was wondering why you had been cultivating in peace. So the map you spoke of is the secret of the entire underground palace. As soon as he said that, the expressions of all the cultivators changed again. They stared at Qin Wendian. Yes, the map that Qin Wendian got, did it really contain the secret of the underground palace? Qin Wendian froze for a moment before a strange smile appeared on his face, as though he was mocking himself. Xian Xing's pride was ingrained deep in his bones. He had always felt that he was the most outstanding one among these people. At the very least, his attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions were as such. No matter what Qin Wendian said, even if he used facts to prove it, Xian Xing would still be able to push all the blame onto the map. Qin Wendian understood that no matter what he said, it would be meaningless. He simply smiled and replied, let's just treat it as what you said. But right now, all of you are waiting for death. Only I have a chance to find a way out. What do you guys want? You finally admitted it. Xian Xing's killing intent gushed forth as he stepped forward, hand it over. Very good, seems like you have already made your choice. Qin Wendian glanced at Xian Xing before turning his gaze onto the others. Xiaolin Yue's beautiful eyes flickered unceasingly, as though she was in contemplation. Xian Xing, Qin Wendian is right. You have nothing better to do. Although you're proficient in divine inscriptions, you chose to give up on it and still want to deal with Qin Wendian. Right now, he is the only one who has a chance to find a way out. I won't allow you to touch him. Xiaolin Yue expressed her attitude. Xian Xing turned and stared at her. Must you go against me because of him? If you want to think so, just treat it as so. Xiaolin Yue coldly spoke. The experts of the Shao sect gathered behind her while those from the Twin Stars Alliance appeared beside Xian Xing. The experts from both sides were in a stalemate again. Let's talk about everything after we find the exit. At this moment, another person expressed his opinion. This person wasn't from either of the two major powers. That's right. Since everyone is trapped here, there's no meaning in fighting. Do you want everyone to die together with him? Another genius spoke, as though everyone didn't agree with Xian Xing. Fine, since everyone says so, let's give him some more time. The person who acted to kill Qin Wendian earlier finally spoke. His eyes stared coldly at Qin Wendian as he spoke. Upon hearing his words, an expression of interest appeared on Qin Wendian's face. After which, a mocking smile appeared on Qin Wendian's face. Were these people protecting him really for his own good? Clearly not. Once they found the exit, they would be like Xian Xing and interrogate him about what he obtained exactly. In truth, as long as one used their brains and thought about it, Immortal Kings and Immortal Foundation characters were trapped here and the map was left untouched. Could it be the treasure that concealed the secret of the underground palace? However, the greed of humans was incomprehensible. They were only willing to believe what they wanted. Just like Xian Xing, he was certain that Qin Wendian must have obtained something. If not, how could he accomplish something that others couldn't? Is this the end? Qin Wendian laughed mockingly. I'm trying to find a way out, yet there are people who want to kill me. Now that you guys have agreed not to kill me, can this matter be considered settled? What do you want? The countenance of the genius who acted against Qin Wendian turned cold as he spoke. Qin Wendian had a cold smile on his face. He pointed his finger at the genius's face as he coldly spoke, kill him. If not, you guys can find your own way out. None of you can even think about leaving. At the instant the sound of his voice faded, Qin Wendian's entire body was filled with coldness. Did this person really think that his temper was very good? Boom! That person roared and stepped out. His aura was terrifying as a terrifying pressure bore down on Qin Wendian. Yet at this moment, Qin Wendian directly closed his eyes, as though he was waiting to be slaughtered. Stop! Someone roared. Numerous silhouettes flickered, directly surrounding that person. What do you guys want to do? That genius roared. Qin Wendian, the city of ancient emperors doesn't kill people. Why must you do this? Someone spoke. Are you blind? Before this, why didn't you tell him that he wanted to kill me? Qin Wendian coldly spoke. That genius who was surrounded by the crowd radiated a terrifying aura, as though he was prepared to attack at any moment. Do it. A cold voice rang out as a powerful freezing energy bore down. It was actually Xiaolin Yue who took the initiative to act. Not only that, there were several experts from the Shao sect who acted at the same time as her. Terrifying golden chains shot out from the diagram on the ground, directly binding the two geniuses. Divine inscriptionists acted, restricting the movements of the two geniuses so that they wouldn't take out their immortal-ranked weapons, resulting in casualties. At this instant, rumbling auras gushed forth. Those people who didn't seem to have any intentions to act earlier all acted at the same time. Their decisiveness and ruthlessness caused the hearts of everyone to tremble. That encircled genius howled in rage, wanting to take out his immortal weapon only to discover that countless attacks were raining down on him at the same time. His strength was restricted and his limbs were locked. Towering auras gushed forth at the same time. This was simply a path of no return. And Qin Wendian watched everything that was happening indifferently. He felt a chill in his heart. For the sake of self-interest, the so-called rule of not killing was useless. Once these geniuses showed their fangs, they would be more decisive and terrifying than anyone else. He couldn't help but think of himself. These people thought that he had obtained some kind of treasure. If so, what would the consequences be once he went out? Qin Wendian, just focus on finding a way out. Since you are a member of my Shao sect, I naturally won't allow anything to happen to you. At this moment, Shaolin Yue spoke in a tone filled with meaning, as though hinting at something. Right. Qin Wendian smiled and nodded. He could roughly guess Shaolin Yue's thoughts. Qin Wendian walked to a corner and glanced at the crowd. After that, he sat down cross-legged and ignored the crowd, entering into a state of enlightenment. He believed that after this, no one would dare to act against him again. At the very least, before he exited the underground palace, no one would be so foolish as to dig their own graves. Shaolin Yue and the others stared at Qin Wendian, each with their own ulterior motives in their hearts. Xian Xing glanced at Shaolin Yue. He could already guess what Shaolin Yue was thinking. Most probably, Shaolin Yue would do everything she could to protect Qin Wendian. Even after they exited the underground palace, she would still do so. Qin Wendian and Di Tian, the two of them, were still in the midst of comprehending. They stood in the center of the gigantic palm imprint, carefully contemplating. However, how could it be so easy to comprehend the art left behind by an ancient emperor? Time flowed by bit by bit. In the blink of an eye, another month passed. Today, Qin Wendian finally gained a trace of enlightenment. God's hand. Maybe, he finally understood the true meaning of God's hand. However, he was still immersed in his state of enlightenment. Only after several days did Qin Wendian's eyes abruptly open as he spoke in a low voice, "I understand now." Instantly, numerous gazes turned to Qin Wendian, staring at him. Qin Wendian, have you found the secret of the underground palace? Shaolin Yue's silhouette flickered as she appeared beside Qin Wendian. Her beautiful eyes involuntarily trembled. After being trapped here for half a year, one could very well imagine how anxious they were in their hearts. It was just that they had been suppressing their emotions all this while. Only when they looked at Qin Wendian did they finally see a trace of hope. Right now, a single sentence from Qin Wendian undoubtedly stirred the hearts of everyone. Their gazes all turned to Qin Wendian. Maybe, but we will only know after we try. Qin Wendian spoke, his words causing the eyes of everyone to gleam with sharpness. Go ahead then. Shaolin Yue spoke. Qin Wendian stood up and stared at everyone as he spoke. It's somewhat difficult for me to do this alone. I hope those who cultivate in divine inscriptions can cooperate with me and light up all the divine inscriptions in the underground palace. You mean to activate all the divine inscriptions in the underground palace? Xian Xing walked over and stared at Qin Wendian. Are you sure this won't cause a catastrophic disaster? I've said it before, you basically don't understand. Qin Wendian coldly glanced at Xian Xing. It's up to you whether you want to believe it or not. If no one is willing to cooperate, forgive me for being powerless. You guys can think of a way to exit this place yourselves. You. Xian Xing pointed his finger at Qin Wendian as anger gushed forth. Fine, we will do as you say. Chapter 9-11. Among the geniuses in the underground palace, the Shao sect and Twin Stars Alliance were the strongest. Shaolin Yue supported Qin Wendian, and now that Xian Xing had no objections, the others naturally wouldn't object. In addition, they all wanted to exit this place as well. This was a forbidden ground, a place where there was no danger, yet it could trap people to death. Qin Wendian was the only person who could bring them out. But even so, it was only a possibility. They could only give it a try. Divine inscriptionists, come out. In addition, they must be divine inscriptionists who can see through the divine inscriptions in the underground palace. Qin Wendian spoke. He was one of them. Xian Xing naturally could do it as well. After that, several more people walked out. It wasn't difficult for them to see through the divine inscriptions, they could all see through them and activate them. Right, 6 of us should be enough. Qin Wendian nodded. After that, he walked to a location and pointed to the ground. The 5 of you, each choose a path and activate all the divine inscriptions on each path. Since you all can see through these divine inscriptions, you naturally know which position is the safest. As for the others, just follow the 5 of them. What about you? Xian Xing stared at Qin Wendian as he asked. For this underground palace, if one were to observe it from the outside, they would discover that this is the diagram of a gigantic palm imprint. These 5 paths are the 5 fingers of the gigantic palm imprint. The place where we came from is the center of the palm. I'll be in charge of that place. Qin Wendian spoke. His words caused the eyes of everyone to flicker. Hearing Qin Wendian's words, it did seem like the center of the palm imprint. It was just that they weren't able to sense the shape of the entire underground palace. Why are you in charge of the center of the palm? Xian Xing coldly asked. If you can exit this place, you can do it. Qin Wendian made an inviting gesture as a mocking light flashed in his eyes. Xian Xing stared at Qin Wendian, his countenance somewhat unfriendly. He could only snort coldly. The people of the Shao sect will follow you. Shaolin Yue spoke to Qin Wendian. All right. Qin Wendian nodded his head. After which, he turned and walked towards the location of the palm of the underground palace. Shaolin Yue brought the experts of the Shao sect and followed after him. As for the other experts, they all took their positions. As divine inscriptionists, they all knew how to activate the divine inscriptions and choose a safe location. There was no need for Qin Wendian to teach them how to do this. Qin Wendian found his position, and the members of the Shao sect followed beside him. After which, he began to activate the divine imprints beneath his feet, lighting up the individual divine imprints. Qin Wendian closed his eyes, he didn't even need to use his eyes to look. In his mind, he had already inscribed the diagram of each and every divine inscription. In fact, he was already able to condense the divine inscriptions. Hence, activating these divine inscriptions wasn't a problem for him. Bit by bit, the entire underground palace started to light up, becoming more and more resplendent. Terrifying divine inscriptions flowed around the entire underground palace as a terrifying might was faintly discernible. Once it was detonated, it was highly possible that the destructive power would be unleashed. The power of divine inscriptions is truly marvelous. These glowing lights are like different types of innate techniques. This should be what Father always said about the 10,000 techniques returning to one. No matter what, they would all be able to return to one in the end. Shaolin Yue silently mused. Cultivating divine inscriptions would easily delay one's cultivation. Hence, the vast majority of stellar martial cultivators only focused on strength and didn't focus on cultivating divine inscriptions. However, truly powerful divine inscriptionists were all respected by others. When all the divine inscriptions in the underground palace lit up, the geniuses inclined their heads and stared at this space. Golden runic light flowed around every corner of the underground palace. No, maybe this wasn't a palace. At this moment, they discovered that it was just like what Qin Wendian had said. This place was actually a gigantic palm imprint. The runic light caused the arc of the palm imprint to be revealed. It was as though a gigantic palm imprint had slammed down, causing this sealed underground palace to be formed. Can we exit just like that? Many people silently mused. Although only Qin Wendian thought of doing this, there were immortal kings who were trapped here for tens of thousands of years. There should be some among them who understood the power of divine inscriptions. Even if they didn't, given the comprehension abilities of immortal kings, it shouldn't be too difficult for them to light up this underground palace. Why didn't they find the exit? Clearly, just this alone wasn't enough. Qin Wendian's eyes were tightly shut. His will gushed out frenziedly, starting to control the flow of the runic inscriptions. Under his guidance, the runic inscriptions in the underground palace started to flow as well. At the start, Qin Wendian guided the runic inscriptions. Eventually, a terrifying might gushed forth as terrifying rumbling sounds rang out, causing the entire underground palace to tremble. He really did it. Xiaoling Yue stared at Qin Wendian, her beautiful eyes gleaming with a dazzling light. What immortal kings couldn't accomplish even after spending tens of thousands of years, Qin Wendian actually succeeded in just half a year. Although she had been anticipating this, when it really happened, she couldn't help but feel disbelief in her heart. Was the comprehension of humans really so miraculous? Immortal kings couldn't even comprehend the method to break the seal, yet it was actually done by Qin Wendian, who was at the celestial phenomenon realm. The gigantic palm imprint started to flow frenziedly, as though Qin Wendian no longer needed to control it. Qin Wendian abruptly turned and sprinted away as he spoke, "Follow me." The countenances of Xiaoling Yue and the others flickered as their hearts tightened. They turned and followed after Qin Wendian, rushing towards the entrance they came from. That place was also a dead end, there was no exit. Boom! A terrifying beam of light abruptly shot out, gushing forth from the end of the tunnel. The entire gigantic palm imprint trembled violently before exploding apart inch by inch. And in front of them, an exit seemed to have appeared. This scene caused Xiaoling Yue's heart to tremble. The group of them increased their speed, rushing towards the exit. Qin Wendian! A roar rang out. The other geniuses in the underground palace were madly rushing over. Xian Xing roared in rage, his voice filled with coldness. No wonder Qin Wendian chose that location. So it turned out that it was the closest to the exit. Bzz. Qin Wendian's entire person transformed into a wind rock, resembling a true wind rock as he rushed out of the exit. After that, he discovered that he had appeared in another passageway. The sounds of explosions rang out unceasingly behind him, as the sound of air being pierced rang out. Xiaoling Yue and the experts from the Xiao sect and Twin Stars Alliance all stepped into the passageway. They didn't even have the time to settle the debt with Qin Wendian. They could only stare at the passageway, feeling a chill in their hearts. Would it be another dead end? There's a trace of light, there should be a path ahead. A person exclaimed in shock. The group of them continued moving forward, and after passing through this ancient passageway, they arrived at a gigantic space. In the surroundings of this space, there were countless divine inscriptions and diagrams that were incomparably complex. Qin Wendian had no way to see through them. Earlier, there was a gigantic palm imprint. Is this the interior of the body? Qin Wendian's heart trembled slightly. However, this body didn't seem to be complete. Cracks could be seen everywhere, and light shone in from the outside. There were already people rushing towards the exit, exclaiming in shock, "Is this a statue of an ancient emperor? We walked out from the body of an ancient emperor." Qin Wendian also flew out from a gigantic hole in the wall. He floated in the air and turned around to stare at the place he came out from. There was an incomparably gigantic body that resembled a statue, yet it felt so real, as though it was a real existence. Earlier, the place they came out from was the arm. Following the arm, they could see that this place seemed to be a real palace. This must be the Emperor Palace we saw. So it turns out that the underground palace we entered was actually the palm imprint of the ancient emperor. Xiaoling Yue's heart trembled. They had entered by following the arm. This was the true passageway. There's a word monument here, there must be an expert who carved his words here. An expert from the Xiao sect exclaimed in shock. The gazes of the crowd turned to the foot of the gigantic body, and indeed, there was an ancient monument there. Their silhouettes flickered as they arrived at the foot of the gigantic body, staring at the monument ahead. I heard that all the ancestors fought here, hence I specially came here to take a look. Seeing the legacy left behind by the ancestors, I can feel how strong all of you were. I can only lament that I wasn't able to be in the same generation as all of you, and was unable to fight against you all. What a pity. I can only leave your legacy here, hoping that those in the future who are fated with you all would be able to witness your glory." The words on the monument were filled with vigor and strength. With a single glance, it was as though each and every stroke contained a terrifying law energy, causing people to be able to sense how terrifying the person who carved these words was. "Lament that I wasn't able to be in the same generation as all of you, and was unable to fight against you all. What a pity." Someone mumbled, feeling shocked in his heart. Since there's no signature, there's basically no need for such exaggerated words. If this is the case, how strong must the person who left this monument be? Lament that he wasn't able to fight against ancient emperors. I wonder which supreme existence of the immortal realms dared to say this. That person must have the combat prowess to be able to fight against ancient emperors. Sadly, there's no signature, we have no way to know which famous ancestor it is. Someone felt that it was a pity. Such an expert actually didn't leave his name behind. Earlier in the underground palace, there was a flame. Seems like the person who left these words was here. Is this place really sealed? Being able to trap immortal kings, why can't it trap the person who left these words behind? Qin Wentian mumbled. His gaze turned to the surroundings. This place was filled with wreckage, with traces of destruction everywhere. Only this monument and the underground palace exuded a majestic aura and was completely undamaged. Clearly, this was something that the ancestor who left these words behind sealed the ruins of ancient Emperor Yi here. This made people sigh in admiration. The spirit of an ancient emperor wasn't something ordinary people could compare to. Not only did he not destroy this place, he even preserved it. At this moment, Qin Wentian saw many people silently leaving this place, moving towards the back of the statue. They didn't shout out like before. Clearly, they had discovered something. Qin Wentian's silhouette flashed as he also stepped out, moving towards the back of the statue. Very swiftly, his gaze was fixed on a certain direction. Chapter 9:12. Before Qin Wentian's eyes, a blood-colored rune appeared. It was as though it was forged from fresh blood, and seemed to possess spirituality. The blood-colored rune light flowed, directly piercing into the eyes of everyone. When Qin Wentian stared at the blood-colored rune, beams of blood-colored light directly imprinted themselves into his sea of consciousness. In his sea of consciousness, a blurry blood-colored silhouette appeared, exuding an ancient aura. A rune shot out from the blood-colored light, directly entering Qin Wentian's sea of consciousness. At this instant, Qin Wentian's heart pounded violently. He closed his eyes, faintly feeling that he was in an illusory space. That blurry silhouette was currently imparting the oracular chant to him. Every single word of the oracular chant was imprinted into his sea of consciousness. It was extremely difficult to understand, as though there was no way to unravel the oracular chant. Imprint. Another ancient rune imprinted itself onto Qin Wentian's heart, violently pounded. Everything in his sea of consciousness vanished without a trace. When he stared at the blood-colored rune again, it seemed as though it contained the essence of the great Tao, exuding an unfathomable might. Are these words left behind by ancient Emperor Yi? Qin Wentian's heart trembled. Not only him, everyone else who saw the blood-colored rune also received the same oracular chant. However, when they opened their eyes, looks of bewilderment could be seen on their faces. To them, this oracular chant was like a heavenly book, impossible to comprehend. Xiao Lingyue, Xian Xing, and the others were also standing here. After receiving the oracular chant, their gazes were fixated on the blood-colored rune light, yet their minds were completely blank. This feeling was too marvelous, they felt as though they had received the essence of the great Tao. However, because they had no way to comprehend it, this essence of the great Tao was like a heavenly book that could vanish from their minds at any moment, leaving no traces at all. Vanished? How can this be? At this moment, one of the geniuses exclaimed in shock as he stared at the blood-colored rune light. The imprints in his sea of consciousness grew increasingly blurry, and very swiftly, all traces actually vanished. When he looked at the blood-colored rune again, there were no more oracular chants imprinted into his sea of consciousness. It was as though he only had a single chance. Numerous silhouettes flickered, instantly sitting cross-legged in different locations as they started to comprehend and cultivate, not allowing the oracular chant to vanish from their minds. There was a high possibility that this oracular chant was left behind by ancient Emperor Yi. If it vanished just like that, it would truly be a pity. Qin Wendian similarly found a spot and sat down cross-legged. His eyes were tightly shut as the oracular chant of the Great Tao imprinted itself into his mind. His body trembled violently as rumbling sounds rang out. His blood actually started to churn frenziedly, and within his Yuanfu, the divine energy formed from the divine inscriptions seethed. His demonic bloodline surged as demonic inscriptions appeared. The candlelight also flickered, and under the influence of the ancient characters, a transformation was taking place. What a powerful oracular chant! Qin Wendian's heart trembled unceasingly. He discovered that no matter how tyrannical the energy in his body was, it was gradually insufficient to sustain the circulation of this oracular chant. What a difficult oracular chant! The Great Tao is formless. Is this the oracular chant for God's hand? Qin Wendian mused silently as he immersed himself in his comprehension. The ultimate art of ancient Emperor Yi was lost in the immortal realms. After ancient Emperor Yi, no one else managed to comprehend God's hand. No one knew how to cultivate God's hand. But this oracular chant that was as profound as the Great Tao might have been left behind by ancient Emperor Yi. This also indicated that there was a high possibility that this was the oracular chant for God's hand. The geniuses in the ancient palace all saw the oracular chant. After that, they all started to cultivate it. But not long after, many geniuses opened their eyes as their expressions were extremely unsightly to behold. The oracular chant that was imprinted into their sea of consciousness gradually vanished without a trace. It was like the oracular chant of the Great Tao had never existed before. Ancient Emperor Yi, what did you leave behind exactly? Someone stared at the gigantic statue as he asked. Only to see some geniuses stepping out, moving towards the interior of the statue, wanting to see if there were any good fortune within. However, they could only see countless complicated divine inscriptions, they had no way to comprehend them. There were several descendants of immortal emperors who could sense how powerful the oracular chant was. In fact, when the oracular chant appeared, a humming sound could be heard from their bodies as a huge transformation occurred. But as time flowed by, this imprint grew fainter and fainter until it completely vanished. How can this be? Some geniuses opened their eyes, staring at this ancient palace. Other than the statue, there was only a broken ground, completely empty. Was this the Emperor Palace they had always wanted to enter? The Emperor Palace they almost paid the price of their lives to enter? This place was desolate, there was nothing here. At the end, Xian Xing and Xiaoling Yue opened their eyes as well. Their countenances were extremely unsightly to behold. This was especially so for Xian Xing, he could faintly sense that he had comprehended a trace of profoundness. This oracular chant might very well be the ultimate art of ancient Emperor Yi, the God's hand imprint. However, he had no way to comprehend it. Standing up, Xian Xing glanced at the Emperor Palace. The only valuable thing here was the gigantic statue itself. Just a lousy remnant like this, what qualifications does it have to be worthy for an immortal emperor to create an Emperor Palace for it? This is nothing but a scam. Xian Xing angrily spoke. They almost fell into despair, but in the end, they didn't gain anything. His silhouette flickered as Xian Xing exited the Emperor Palace. If he wanted to leave, no one would dare to obstruct him. When Xian Xing opened the gates of the Emperor Palace, an instant later, a violent gust of wind gushed forth. The ancient divine inscriptions pathway ahead of him was instantly flattened, as the boundless divine inscriptions were instantly flattened. At this moment, in front of the Emperor Palace, there were still many geniuses gathered there, including those from the Twin Stars Alliance. Naturally, there were also many experts from the Shao sect. Even now, it was still unknown if Xian Xing and Xiaoling Yue were still alive or dead. But at this moment, a beam of light cascaded over. All the divine inscriptions vanished as the ancient pathway appeared. Glancing ahead, they saw the gates of the Emperor Palace open as a figure stood there. It was none other than Xian Xing. The hearts of everyone trembled. Xian Xing is fine, he actually managed to enter the Emperor Palace. Xian Xing is as expected of a genius, one of the Twin Stars Alliance, the son of the Xian Emperor. He actually managed to do it, entering the Emperor Palace. Let's go, let's head to the Emperor Palace to take a look. I wonder if there's any good fortune left. The experts here all sped towards the Emperor Palace while sighing in admiration at how powerful Xian Xing was in their hearts. Among the crowd, Zi Qingxian and Jun Mengchen were there as well. There were many experts behind them, including an extremely powerful young genius. He was none other than the strongest genius of the Shao sect other than Shaolin Yue, ranked number 12 on the Immortal Ascension rankings, Greed Wolf. He stared in the direction of the Emperor Palace, his eyes gleaming with sharpness when he saw Xian Xing. He then spoke in a low voice, "You guys pray that Lin Yue is fine." After speaking, his silhouette flickered as he sped towards the Emperor Palace. Little rascal, who was in Zi Qingshuan's embrace, dashed out. Zi Qingxian and Jun Mengchen immediately followed after. Seeing the excited look on little rascal's face, Qin Wentian should be fine. Maybe, he was still in the Emperor Palace. An instant later, more and more experts rushed into the Emperor Palace. When they saw the statue, their hearts trembled. Those from the Twin Stars Alliance all headed towards Xian Xing, while those from the Shao sect stared at Shaolin Yue. As for the other geniuses in the City of Ancient Emperors, they were all staring at the Emperor Palace. In a short period of time, the Emperor Palace was filled with people. Very swiftly, they discovered the words inscribed on the monument as well as the blood-colored runes behind the statue. Their hearts trembled, knowing that this was the work of the ancient emperor. Little rascal directly leapt towards Qin Wentian. Seeing that Qin Wentian was in the midst of cultivation, he could only lie down at Qin Wentian's feet and quietly lay there. Senior brother Qin. Jun Mengchen and Zi Qingxian also came, but they didn't disturb Qin Wentian's cultivation. Lin Yue, are you alright? Greed Wolf walked towards Shaolin Yue. As a supreme genius ranked number 12 on the Immortal Ascension rankings, Greed Wolf actually chose to follow Shaolin Yue and join the Shao sect. Everyone knew that he wanted to woo Shaolin Yue. I'm fine, I was only trapped here for half a year. It was scary but not dangerous. Shaolin Yue furrowed her brows. During this half a year, she had no harvest at all, causing her to feel extremely uncomfortable in her heart. Greed Wolf noticed Shaolin Yue's depressed mood. He turned his gaze towards Jun Mengchen and saw Qin Wentian sitting there. A cold light flickered in his eyes as he spoke. Lin Yue, I heard that you were brought in by a newcomer of the Shao sect. How can you trust him so easily? At this moment, Qin Wentian seemed to sense something. He slowly opened his eyes and coincidentally saw the coldness in Greed Wolf's eyes as he furrowed his brows. Senior brother, the people of the Shao sect don't even treat us as friends. After you disappeared with Shaolin Yue, we were immediately monitored by the people of the Shao sect. This Greed Wolf even said that if something happened to Shaolin Yue, he wants me and senior sister Qingxian to accompany her in death. Jun Mengchen felt rage in his heart as he transmitted his voice to Qin Wentian. A cold light flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes. Although he was the one who brought Shaolin Yue into the underground palace back then, if it wasn't for Shaolin Yue willingly wanting to take the risk, who would be able to force her? This was originally a gamble. If there was danger, it was one thing for them to vent their anger on him alone. But now, even Jun Mengchen and Zi Qingxian were being implicated. This made him extremely unhappy in his heart. Mengchen, let's find an opportunity to leave the Shao sect. Qin Wentian transmitted his voice. Jun Mengchen nodded his head lightly, he had no sense of belonging to the Shao sect. Although Shaolin Yue was beautiful, she was extremely scheming. The geniuses around her were as many as the clouds and all of them were males. There was no doubt that she was making use of them even though these geniuses were willing to do so. Now, it's about time to talk about what you obtained in the underground palace. At this moment, Xian Xing's gaze once again turned to Qin Wentian. He only saw a group of people walking towards Qin Wentian, radiating coldness, as though they still weren't willing to give up. As the sound of Xian Xing's voice faded, several geniuses turned their gazes onto Qin Wentian. With regards to the secret of the underground palace which no one could decipher, it was actually solved by Qin Wentian. Everyone was still filled with doubt, thinking that Qin Wentian had obtained something. Chapter 9:13. Qin Wentian calmly glanced at Xian Xing. No matter what I obtained, it's already mine. What do you want? Right now, Qin Wentian couldn't be bothered to explain anything. No matter how he explained, these people wouldn't believe him. They would only believe what they wanted to know. Xian Xing walked forward and smiled. If you know what's good for you, it's best if you hand over the treasure you obtained. Maybe I can spare you. Many geniuses from the Twin Stars Alliance followed behind Xian Xing, all of them exuding tyrannical auras. Zi Qingxian and Jun Mengchen both had cold looks on their faces when they saw this scene. Ever since they entered the city of ancient emperors, they had always been under the control of others. Such a feeling was truly stifling. If they knew this would happen, they would have cultivated to the 8th level or 9th level of celestial phenomenon before entering the city of ancient emperors. At that time, these people would understand how powerful disciples from the heavenly talisman realm were. Xian Xing, what do you want? Only to see at this moment, Shaolin Yue brought her people over. Similarly, the geniuses here were as common as the clouds, and it seemed as though they were about to confront the people from the Twin Stars Alliance. Shaolin Yue, if he doesn't give an explanation for this matter, I'm afraid this matter won't be resolved so easily. Xian Xing glanced at Shaolin Yue and her group. Is that so? He's a member of my Shao Gate. Whatever he obtains is his own fortune. What right does your Xian Xing have to interfere? If you really want to touch him, my Shao Gate is not afraid of your Twin Stars Alliance. We can even go to war. We can even start a war. Shaolin Yue coldly spoke, her words causing those geniuses who entered later to scratch their heads in confusion. As expected of the number 6 ranker on the Immortal Ascension rankings, Shaolin Yue actually wanted to start a war against the Twin Stars Alliance for the sake of Qin Wentian. The geniuses from both sides stared at each other, the atmosphere extremely tense. Does your Shao sect really want to start a war against my Twin Stars Alliance for the sake of him? Xian Xing heavily asked. Yes. Shaolin Yue didn't hesitate. Very good. Xian Xing laughed uproariously. He stared at Qin Wentian as he spoke, brat, consider yourself lucky today. However, since we are in the city of ancient emperors, there's no need to worry about you escaping. I truly want to see how the Shao sect will protect you. Let's go. As the sound of his voice faded, Xian Xing waved his hand and led the crowd away. Qin Wentian's gaze was fixed on Xian Xing from the start to the end. His countenance was cold and he was already prepared for battle. However, this battle that should have erupted eventually calmed down because of Shaolin Yue's interference. Qin Wentian also suppressed the flames of anger in his heart. The others would gradually forget the oracular chant, but he didn't. He felt that he would be able to cultivate it. But now wasn't the time for him to fight. Before this, during his cultivation, Qin Wentian felt an extremely profound feeling. The melody of the Great Tao echoed in his mind and he faintly sensed that this oracular chant might really be something left behind by ancient Emperor Yi. Also, there was a high possibility that this oracular chant contained the inheritance of ancient Emperor Yi's ultimate art, God's hand. However, Qin Wentian could clearly sense the profoundness within. If he could cultivate it, his combat prowess would soar to another level. Now, he had to endure it for a little longer. The geniuses in the city of ancient emperors were as common as the clouds, and descendants of immortal kings and emperors could be found everywhere. However, he would eventually reveal his true glory. After a few more years, the people in the city of ancient emperors wouldn't treat him like this anymore. No one would dare to do this to him, and they would finally know what sort of character Qin Wentian was. Many thanks. Qin Wentian smiled at Shaolin Yue. It's what I should do. Shaolin Yue revealed a profound smile to Qin Wentian. since we are all members of the Shao sect, we should share weal and woe together. Share weal and woe together. Qin Wendian laughed in his heart, but he didn't say anything more. Let's go, let's return to the Shao sect together. If there are still people who wish to comprehend the inscriptions, you can continue staying here. Xiaolin Yue was somewhat disappointed with this trip. She had wasted half a year's time and was trapped in the underground palace. During that period of time, the pressure in her heart was extremely great. It wasn't easy for her to exit the palace and even saw the oracular chant. However, she didn't manage to comprehend anything from it. To Xiaolin Yue, this was a great failure. There was no meaning in staying here any longer. She had no way to comprehend the divine inscriptions within the statue. She might as well leave. Qin Wendian, do you still want to stay here to comprehend it? Xiaolin Yue asked. Nope, this oracular chant is too profound and I have no way to comprehend it. Let's go. Qin Wendian smiled and stood up. Zi Qingxian and Jun Mengchen both glanced at Qin Wendian only to hear Qin Wendian speaking to them. There's an oracular chant behind the statue. You guys can give it a try but don't have too much hope. Right. Zi Qingxian and Jun Mengchen nodded their heads as they walked towards the statue. Qin Wendian then followed Xiaolin Yue out of the Emperor Palace. More and more experts were still gathering here. Not far away, a silhouette exuded a magnificence that exuded magnificence through the generations, not losing out to Xiaolin Yue at all. In fact, her aura even surpassed Xiaolin Yue's. This person was none other than a female. She was clad in a phoenix robe, yet her aura was incomparably cold. Her figure was exquisite, her skin as white as jade, and the expression on her face was like a 10,000-year-old glacier. Upon seeing this female, Xiaolin Yue's footsteps halted slightly. However, that female seemed to not have noticed Xiaolin Yue and directly walked past her. Such coldness caused people to not dare to look directly at her. Many gazes turned to this female, their gazes filled with admiration. These people were all descendants of immortal kings and emperors, ordinary females wouldn't be able to enter their eyes. However, this female before them was so lofty that they couldn't even hope to reach her. If they could marry her, it would be sufficient. Their glory would be incomparable, and all the geniuses in the city of ancient emperors would be envious of them. That female also walked past Qin Wendian. A unique aura gushed over, refreshing the heart and mind. This female is extraordinary. Even Xiaolin Yue halted. It should be her. Qin Wendian silently mused. There were 3 most outstanding females in the city of ancient emperors. One of them was Xiaolin Yue, the other was Qing, whom he had been searching for. And the last female was the one with the highest ranking, ranked number 3 in the Immortal Ascension rankings. Her name was Namhuang Yunxi. This should be her. Xiaolin Yue paused for a moment, but when she saw that Namhuang Yunxi wasn't even looking at her, she couldn't help but have an unhappy expression on her face. She lifted her foot and continued on her way, returning to the Shao sect. The group of them soared through the air with incredible speed. Beside Qin Wendian, a figure appeared. It was none other than a genius of the Shao sect, Li Yu, an expert ranked within the top 100 of the Immortal Ascension rankings. He stood beside Qin Wendian and spoke in a low voice, "Many thanks." Qin Wendian's countenance stiffened. He inclined his head and glanced at Li Yu. He naturally understood why Li Yu said thanks. It was just that from the time he brought them out of the underground palace until now, Li Yu was the first and only person to thank him. Smiling at Li Yu, Qin Wendian nodded his head and didn't say anything more. After returning to the Shao sect, the geniuses all returned to their own places. Qin Wendian also returned to his courtyard and continued his cultivation. However, he didn't cultivate for long before he opened his eyes and spoke, "Come in." The sound of footsteps rang out as Xiaolin Yue's beautiful silhouette appeared. Xiaolin Yue had changed into a long green dress, exuding an incomparable charm and beauty akin to a fairy. She smiled sweetly at Qin Wendian as she spoke, "Why? You've just returned and you want to continue cultivating?" I know my cultivation base is too low, and I would be threatened by others from time to time. I naturally have to work harder. Qin Wentian laughed. He was naturally referring to the things that had happened during this period of time. You don't have to be so calculative. Since you've joined the Shao sect, I will naturally take care of you. In addition, I've already treated you as a friend. Shaolin Yue smiled. Her figure and countenance caused Qin Wentian to silently praise her in his heart. This Shaolin Yue was truly a stunner. Being able to have such a beauty as a friend, I'm truly envious. Qin Wentian laughed. Shaolin Yue walked to a spot not far away from Qin Wentian and actually sat down right in front of Qin Wentian. Her beauty was so close that it was sufficient to cause the heartbeats of others to quicken. Your talent is extraordinary, and you also have a high attainment in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. In the future, you would definitely have extraordinary accomplishments. Within the top 100 of the Immortal Ascension rankings, there would definitely be a place for you, or even higher. Shaolin Yue smiled. Your comprehension ability is also extraordinary. Earlier in the Emperor Palace, none of us could comprehend the oracular chant and gradually forgot about it. Only you continued to comprehend it. You should have discovered something, right? This oracular chant is extraordinary, I've indeed comprehended it. Qin Wentian nodded. Right now, his heart was like a mirror. This was what Shaolin Yue truly wanted to ask. Could this oracular chant have something to do with the ancient emperor's secret art? Shaolin Yue asked. Maybe. Qin Wentian didn't deny anything. Among all the geniuses, only you could comprehend this oracular chant. This should have something to do with what you encountered in the underground palace earlier. Also, you were the one who unraveled the mysteries within the oracular chant. Most probably, this is the crux to why you were able to comprehend this oracular chant. Shaolin Yue's beautiful eyes stared straight into Qin Wentian's eyes. Qin Wentian nodded, he didn't deny it. Shaolin Yue's beautiful eyes flashed with a bright light. Her red lips were pursed together, causing the hearts of men to tremble. She then turned to Qin Wentian and asked in a gentle voice, Qin Wentian, can you teach me? This was a world-shocking art of the ancient emperor's secret art, an ultimate art that had been lost in time. Shaolin Yue didn't mind using a honey trap just to obtain it. How could Qin Wentian not see through her intentions? However, he still shook his head and replied, Sect leader, you are right. This oracular chant has a very high possibility that it has something to do with the underground palace. However, it's precisely because I unraveled the mysteries within the oracular chant that I was able to faintly sense the power contained within. However, I'm still unable to comprehend it. And just like what you said, I'm the only one who managed to unravel the mysteries within the oracular chant. Hence, this is the ending. Other than me, there's no one else who could comprehend the oracular chant at all. This is a certainty, and those who came after me wouldn't be able to do so as well. In addition, I have no way to teach you. Shaolin Yue's countenance changed when she heard Qin Wentian's words. However, she instantly regained her composure and smiled, there's only the two of us. Why must you hide this from me? You should have obtained something in the underground palace, right? When Qin Wentian heard this, the last trace of hope he had for Shaolin Yue was completely shattered. Before this, she had already asked Qin Wentian several times and Qin Wentian had clearly replied that it was merely a map. Now that she asked this question again, it was clear that in Shaolin Yue's heart, her thoughts were the same as Xian Xing's. There was no difference between the two of them. If I say I didn't, would you believe me? Qin Wentian stared at Shaolin Yue's beautiful eyes. He could see the smile in Shaolin Yue's eyes slowly vanishing. Chapter 9:14. When Shaolin Yue asked that question to Qin Wentian, it already indicated that she didn't trust Qin Wentian at all. Hence, Qin Wentian didn't reply directly, choosing to say, if I say I didn't, would you believe me? He knew that Shaolin Yue wouldn't believe him. In that case, no matter what, the ending was already determined. Staring at Shaolin Yue's countenance gradually turning cold, Qin Wentian felt a chill in his heart. These geniuses were very intelligent, but they were too intelligent. Shaolin Yue deduced that the reason why he could comprehend the blood-colored runic inscriptions was related to the underground palace and was certain that he had obtained something. Because regardless of her or Xian Xing, neither of them felt that Qin Wentian had the talent to surpass all the geniuses trapped in the underground palace. Based on what qualifications did he have to comprehend the secret behind the blood-colored runic inscriptions? Qin Wentian, I treated you well, right? Shaolin Yue asked. The smile on her face was extremely cold. What do you mean by treating me well? Qin Wentian saw the change in Shaolin Yue's attitude, his tone also turned cold. When you were surrounded by the God Extermination Palace led by Ji Lanshan, it was me who asked you to join the Shao sect. Ji Lanshan took the initiative to retreat and no longer dared to find trouble with you. You brought us into the underground palace, causing many people to feel resentment towards you, but I didn't blame you at all. Even when Xian Xing wanted to deal with you, I was the one who stopped him. Is all of this still not enough? Shaolin Yue spoke. I was surrounded by Ji Lanshan, you've already seen it for yourself. He couldn't do anything to me at all. Regardless of whether I joined the Shao sect or not, I have no fear of Ji Lanshan. You asked me to join because you needed my divine inscriptions. You wanted me to bring you to the Emperor Palace, and I did it within half a year. Not only did I rescue all of you from the underground palace, I even brought you into the depths of the Emperor Palace. Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with sharpness as he slowly spoke, because in the Emperor Palace, you didn't obtain anything. This is why you would say such words. If you obtained an ancient emperor treasure or an inheritance, would you still say such words? If before you entered the Emperor Palace, and someone told you that I could bring you in within half a year, would you reject? I'm afraid you'll be deeply grateful. If you gain something, it's your own wisdom. If you don't gain anything, you shift all the blame to me, Qin Wentian. Is this the way of a sect leader? Qin Wentian said coldly, as for Xian Xing, is there any difference between the reason why Xian Xing wants to deal with me and what sovereign wants to do now? Shaolin Yue stared at Qin Wentian. After which, she smiled and stood up, Qin Wentian, you're very good. I'll give you some time to consider it. With that, she flicked her sleeves and left the place. Qin Wentian sent Shaolin Yue off with his gaze. His countenance was as calm as ever, with no changes at all. He closed his eyes and continued his cultivation, comprehending the incomparably mystical energy. Being in the city of ancient emperors, he understood that raising his strength as soon as possible was the most important thing. The courtyard was incomparably quiet. Qin Wentian had no distractions in his heart until Zi Qingxian and Jun Mengchen came back to look for him. When he saw Jun Mengchen walking over, his face was filled with rage. Qin Wentian smiled at him, what's wrong? Senior brother, they're monitoring us. Jun Mengchen angrily spoke. That's normal. Qin Wentian laughed. For the next period of time, I intend to go into closed-door seclusion and cultivate here in this courtyard. You guys should also work hard in your cultivation as well. Before the Shao sect makes their move against us, let them monitor us. Don't clash with them. Jun Mengchen started, aren't we going to leave the Shao sect directly? Right now, it's no longer a situation where we can leave just because we want to. Shaolin Yue thinks that I've obtained something she wanted, the ancient inheritance. But in truth, that's something that needs to be comprehended by oneself. She couldn't comprehend it herself, so she assumed that I've obtained some other treasures. There's no way for her to explain this. For a period of time, I'll be under their surveillance and my movements will be restricted. Hence, I might as well go into closed-door seclusion. Qin Wentian smiled. With regards to you guys, their restrictions shouldn't be too strict. As long as I don't leave, I don't know when they would act against us. I understand. Before they act, we just have to endure and not clash with them. We'll do our best to delay and raise our strength. Jun Mengchen spoke. Yeah, Mengchen, I know it's hard on you. You have an impulsive personality, but in the city of ancient emperors, we have no choice but to endure. Qin Wentian spoke. Don't worry, senior brother, I understand. I can only blame myself for being too weak. If I was at the 9th level of celestial phenomenon, why would I fear them? We can just fight. Jun Mengchen angrily spoke. Okay, let's go and cultivate. Zi Qingxian could understand Qin Wentian's urgency to raise his strength. She was very clear what sort of character Qin Wentian was. If one truly angered him, he would dare to do anything. Even in front of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, his arrogance towered up into the heavens. But given his personality, he could also endure things that ordinary people couldn't. Right now, Qin Wentian was most definitely in desperate need of time. Emicham, senior brother, you should cultivate well. We will be leaving too. Jun Mengchen and Zi Qingxian left. Qin Wentian drew in a deep breath and entered a meditative state once more. Half a month later, Shaolin Yue came to look for Qin Wentian again. This time around, she directly asked, "Have you made up your mind?" Qin Wentian stared at Shaolin Yue, smiling as he shook his head. "I've already told you before. If you want to cultivate the oracular chant within the blood-colored runes, you have to comprehend the divine inscriptions in the underground palace first. However, it's impossible for you to do so. Even if I wanted to teach you, it's impossible for me to do so." Shaolin Yue frowned as she coldly spoke. "Qin Wentian, I've already given you enough face." "Many thanks." Qin Wentian smiled. Shaolin Yue didn't say anything more. She turned and departed, leaving behind an icy glare. In the next few months, Shaolin Yue came to visit several times. Every time she visited, her actions were extremely direct and her attitude grew colder and colder. Shaolin Yue also discovered that Qin Wentian seemed to be extremely patient. He didn't say that he wanted to leave the Shao sect and just quietly stayed in his courtyard to cultivate, as though nothing had happened. As for Qin Wentian's two companions, they would sometimes cultivate in the Shao sect, and sometimes they would leave the city of ancient emperors to temper themselves. She had sent people from the Shao sect to monitor them, but they didn't seem to have any intentions of escaping. It seemed as though they were planning on wasting time with her. Qin Wentian and his companions knew their own limits and knew that it was impossible for them to forcefully leave the Shao sect. They were merely trying to infuriate her. Finally, Shaolin Yue's patience reached its limit. Today, experts from the Shao sect came to Qin Wentian's courtyard and directly barged in. However, Shaolin Yue wasn't there. The person in the lead was none other than the second strongest expert of the Shao sect, Greed Wolf. The auras of this group were extremely terrifying, their might bore down on Qin Wentian. This was especially so for Greed Wolf. His countenance was ice-cold, filled with killing intent. Qin Wentian opened his eyes and stared at him only to hear Greed Wolf coldly speaking. "Qin Wentian, you brought Lin Yue into the underground palace and were trapped there for half a year. Lin Yue still protected you or you would have long since fallen into the hands of Xian Xing. In fact, even when people from the Twin Stars Alliance came to ask for you, Lin Yue still refused to hand you over. Lin Yue's heart is kind, she tolerated you time and time again. I can't be bothered to waste my breath on you. Within 7 days, if you don't hand over the secret manual, I will expel you from the Shao sect. If you aren't a disciple of the Shao sect, don't blame us for being impolite to you." After speaking, Greed Wolf blasted out with his palm. "Let's go." Greed Wolf waved his hands. The other experts of the Shao sect all stomped on the ground as the sounds of destruction rang out. Their eyes coldly stared at Qin Wentian as they departed together. After Greed Wolf and the others left, Jun Mengchen and Zi Qingxian came over. Upon seeing Qin Wentian sitting there, Jun Mengchen couldn't help but ask, "Senior brother Qin, they are truly too impudent." Qin Wentian's countenance was as calm as ever. He glanced at Jun Mengchen as he smiled. 7 days? Just bear with it for a few more days before we leave the Shao sect. Okay, senior brother. I will cultivate here and accompany you. Jun Mengchen nodded. Qin Wentian felt warmth in his heart as he smiled and nodded his head. Zi Qingxian also stayed behind, cultivating in this dilapidated place. 5 days later, a violent aura gushed forth, terrifying to the extreme. Qin Wendian and Zi Qingxian stood at the side, only to see Jun Mengchen radiating boundless astral light as his constellation appeared. Rumbling sounds rang out from his body as an ancient aura gushed forth, akin to a primordial beast. The rumbling sounds continued unceasingly, echoing far and wide. To think that Mengchen would catch up to us so soon. I'm really happy for him. A smile appeared in Qin Wendian's eyes. He was very happy. This was the only thing that could make him feel carefree during this period of time. Zi Qingxian smiled and nodded. After that, she glanced at Qin Wendian, feeling a sense of inferiority in her heart. The first time they met, her cultivation base was the highest. But now, Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen were both at the same level as her. In terms of combat prowess, she would be the weakest. The two beside her were both supreme geniuses. If she was beside them, she would only dim in comparison. The sound of air breaking rang out, many experts of the Shao sect turned their gazes over. Upon seeing that it was Jun Mengchen who broke through, many of them crossed their arms in front of their chests as they laughed coldly. A 6th level ascendant, after breaking through, he would only be at the 7th level. In the Shao sect, this level of cultivation truly couldn't be considered anything. There are still 2 more days for you to consider. Don't be so shameless when we give you face. An expert from the Shao sect glanced over as he spoke. Among the crowd, Li Yu silently watched everything. He also saw Xiao Lingyue, who was far away, yet his interest was waning. His silhouette flickered as he appeared before Xiao Lingyue and called out, "Lingyue. What's the matter?" Xiao Lingyue stared at Li Yu as she asked. "I've accompanied you for quite some time in the Shao sect, and I'm quite happy with it. But now, I wish to roam the city of ancient emperors alone. From now on, I will no longer be part of the Shao sect. Take care." Li Yu spoke to Xiao Lingyue, his words causing Xiao Lingyue's countenance to change. "Li Yu, the Shao sect needs you." The Shao sect is one of the top 3 powers in the city of ancient emperors. You are also ranked number 6 in the Immortal Ascension rankings. Having one more wouldn't make a difference. Farewell. Li Yu bowed slightly. After which, his silhouette flickered as he directly departed. Xiao Lingyue stared at Li Yu's back as an unnatural expression appeared on her face. Li Yu actually left the Shao sect at this moment. Was he unhappy with her? Chapter 9:15. Li Yu's departure caused Xiao Lingyue to be in an extremely bad mood. Although the Shao sect was powerful, it was also because there were many geniuses in the city of ancient emperors. Li Yu, as a genius ranked within the top 100 of the Immortal Ascension rankings, was sufficient to establish a power of his own. Yet, he chose to follow her. He was an extremely important person to her. Because of a genius like Li Yu, Xiao Lingyue, was able to make the Shao sect stronger. But now, Li Yu had actually left. From Li Yu's eyes, Xiao Lingyue could see a trace of disappointment. With regards to Li Yu's personality, she understood him a little. He was a cheerful and optimistic person, carefree. Although he was somewhat frivolous, he was an upright person. He joined the Shao sect purely because of her, Xiao Lingyue's charm. Now that he left, it was also because her charm no longer existed in his heart. Xiao Lingyue was an intelligent person. Recently, she had only done one thing, and that was to target Qin Wendian. Li Yu might have left because he was unhappy with her. However, Xiao Lingyue didn't feel that she had done anything wrong. She had to obtain the inheritance of ancient Emperor Yi no matter what. If she could obtain the ultimate art, God's hand, it wouldn't merely be a temporary boost to her strength. It would accompany her for the rest of her life, and her combat prowess would forever be a step ahead of others. At this moment, in the cultivation ground of Qin Wendian's courtyard, Jun Mengchen opened his eyes as sharpness gleamed within. Qin Wendian smiled. "Mengchen, congratulations." Jun Mengchen stretched his body, feeling extremely carefree. He then replied, "Still not enough, I'm only at the 7th level of celestial phenomenon. Let's take it step by step." Cultivation isn't something that can be accomplished in a single leap. Right now, the three of us are already at the same level. Qin Wendian laughed. After that, he spoke, let's go out for a walk. Go out for a walk. Zi Qingxian and Jun Mengchen both turned their gazes to Qin Wendian. There were only 2 days left to the deadline given by the Shao sect. If Qin Wendian wanted to go out for a walk now, it wouldn't be so simple. It's time to leave. Qin Wendian transmitted his voice to the two of them. The two of them didn't say anything, they merely exchanged glances and nodded in their hearts. Let's go. Qin Wendian turned and stepped into the air, heading towards the exit of the Shao clan. However, at this moment, a heaven chosen of the Shao clan appeared in front of Qin Wendian, blocking his path. Where are you going? Qin Wendian frowned slightly and said, What? Do I lose my freedom after joining the Shao clan? Can't I even go out to relax? In 2 days, it will be the deadline. It won't be too late to go out then. That person shouted coldly. Many experts of the Shao clan flew into the sky to stop Qin Wendian. But I want to leave right now. If the Shao clan even restricts my freedom, then there's no need to think about it for another 2 days. I'll leave the Shao clan right now. Qin Wendian coldly spoke. That expert wanted to say more, but Shaolin Yue only spoke, let him out. Shaolin Yue slowly walked over, causing the gazes of everyone to turn to her. She then spoke, Qin Wendian, there's no problem for you to go out to relax. But you have to think this through. The people of the Twin Stars Alliance are still looking for you. If Xian Xing captures you, he wouldn't be as nice as I am. That's my problem, there's no need for sect leader to worry about it. Qin Wendian replied. Fine, you can leave then. Shaolin Yue coldly laughed. Qin Wendian and the other two stepped out, while the people of the Shao clan stood at their original location, coldly watching as Qin Wendian and the others left. After Qin Wendian stepped out of the Shao clan, Shaolin Yue's silhouette flickered as the experts of the Shao clan followed after her. I knew it wouldn't be so easy. Jun Mengchen coldly laughed when he sensed the experts chasing after them. Shaolin Yue is here as well, and so is Greed Wolf. He's ranked number 12 on the Immortal Ascension rankings and is also the person Shaolin Yue trusts the most in the Shao sect. Zi Qingxian spoke in a low voice. This group of experts was extremely powerful. When I break through to the 9th level of celestial phenomenon, the first person I want to kill is none other than Greed Wolf. Before this, when senior brother Qin and the others were still in the Emperor Palace, Greed Wolf was extremely rude to us, spying on us and even threatened us. Jun Mengchen unhappily spoke. He wasn't in a hurry. Although Greed Wolf was at the 9th level of celestial phenomenon, many geniuses would stay at the 9th level for a long period of time because there was still a heavenly moat before them, the immortal realm. It wasn't so easy to step into the immortal realm in a single step. There were many 9th level ascendants who were stuck at this level for hundreds of years. For those with weaker talent, they might never be able to step into the immortal realm in their entire lives. However, there shouldn't be many of such people in the city of ancient emperors. After all the geniuses at the very peak of the immortal realms were gathered here. The speed of Qin Wendian and the other two was extremely fast. However, the experts of the Shao sect were all geniuses. They followed closely behind them, and it was basically impossible for them to shake them off. The experts in the city of ancient emperors all had expressions of interest on their faces when they saw this scene. That female was incomparably beautiful, it was actually Shaolin Yue. She led the experts of the Shao sect in pursuit of the 3 people in front of them, but they had no idea what their identities were. I heard that it's Qin Wendian. Recently, he's quite famous. Even Xian Xing of the Twin Stars Alliance wants to capture him. It's rumored that back then, it was precisely because of him that they were able to enter the Emperor Palace. There were also people who heard stories about Qin Wendian. Evidently, in the city of ancient emperors, Qin Wendian was quite famous as well. There were countless geniuses in the city of ancient emperors, and many of them were paying attention to the situation here. And at this moment, Qin Wentian and the other two suddenly halted their steps, no longer moving forward. Xiao Lingyue and the others halted as well, staring at the situation ahead. Michem. At this moment, Xiao Lingyue saw a group of figures appearing from afar. Her beautiful eyes flashed with interest. It was actually people she was familiar with. The first time she met Qin Wentian was being pursued by these people. At this moment, the ones who appeared before Qin Wentian and the others were none other than Ji Lanshan and the other experts from the God Extermination Palace. Truly, enemies often cross paths. Ji Lanshan stood in the air, coldly staring at Qin Wentian and the other two. After which, he coldly laughed. What a coincidence. I heard that the people of the Twin Stars Alliance are here to capture you. Also, the people of the Shao sect don't seem to be very fond of you. What does that have to do with you? Qin Wentian asked. You can't have forgotten what happened back then so quickly, right? Ji Lanshan spoke with cold arrogance. His gaze turned to Xiao Lingyue as he spoke. Sect leader Xiao, I have some grudges I want to settle with him. Sect leader Xiao, you won't interfere, right? Xiao Lingyue coldly laughed. She stepped forward, sandwiching Qin Wentian and the other two in the middle. Xiao Lingyue then spoke. Qin Wentian doesn't seem to want to admit that he received the protection of the Shao sect. Who would have thought that he would meet you here so quickly, Ji Lanshan? In that case, I really want to ask Qin Wentian, what is your attitude now? I don't understand what sect leader means. Qin Wentian calmly replied. Are you pretending to be dumb? Greed Wolf coldly snorted. The Shao sect protected your safety and protected your life, yet you actually enjoyed the benefits alone, ignoring the benefits of the Shao sect. Right now, let me ask you again. Do you agree to what Lin Yue said? What if I say no? Qin Wentian replied. In that case, my Shao sect will expel you from our sect. You aren't worthy to be a disciple of our Shao sect. Your life and death has nothing to do with our Shao sect. Xiao Lingyue coldly spoke. It was as though she wanted to use this opportunity to deal a heavy blow to Qin Wentian. If he continued to be obstinate, she believed that with so many experts from the God Extermination Palace, they wouldn't give him any more chances. It was as though they were cooperating with Xiao Lingyue's words. The experts from the God Extermination Palace all stepped out, directly surrounding Qin Wentian and the two others. Ji Lanshan even released his terrifying constellation, causing 1,000 talismans to glow resplendently. Qin Wentian coldly laughed as he stared at Xiao Lingyue. What a good Shao sect. For the sake of seizing the treasures of the members of your sect, you can be said to be unscrupulous. As for the so-called expulsion, when have I, Qin Wentian, cared? From now onwards, I, Qin Wentian, and the two others no longer have any relationship with the Shao sect. Impudent. A fearsome aura gushed forth from Greed Wolf, yet Xiao Lingyue waved her hands. I want to see how long you can be arrogant for. Qin Wentian. Ji Lanshan roared. Back then you seized the interspatial rings of a disciple of my God Extermination Palace and only managed to escape with the protection of the Shao sect. Have you ever thought that there would be a day like this? Do you have any face? A mere character ranked below 300th in the Immortal Ascension rankings? You, Ji Lanshan, aren't qualified to speak to me in this manner. You are 2 levels higher than me, yet you couldn't do anything to me back then. Let alone today, in front of me, you don't even have the qualifications to be called a Heaven's Chosen. The so-called descendant of an immortal emperor is nothing but a joke. Qin Wentian arrogantly spoke. At this moment, he was completely different from the low profile he was when he was in the Shao sect. His arrogance towered up into the sky, causing the eyes of the geniuses in the surroundings to gleam with a divine light. What qualifications did this fellow have exactly? He actually dared to be so disrespectful to the experts of the Shao sect and even wanted to oppose Ji Lanshan. Boasting shamelessly. Do you think you still have a chance to inscribe divine inscriptions today? Ji Lanshan's 1,000 talismans constellation erupted forth violently. At the same time, he circulated the 1,000 Talismans immortal tome, causing an unexcelled might to radiate from him. There's no need for me to inscribe divine inscriptions. Qin Wendian laughed. He stepped out and howled in a frenzy. Thunderous rumbling sounds echoed out as a resplendent light illuminated the sky. His entire body shone with fiend god light as his body expanded to a size of 10 meters, resembling a divinity, unexcelled in the world. It doesn't mean that one's strength is strong. An expert from the God Extermination Palace coldly snorted. After that, the experts from the God Extermination Palace all unleashed their constellations, wanting to suppress Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian similarly released his constellation as violet gold light flashed. He stretched out his palms and in an instant, boundless runic light circulated around his palms. At this instant, Qin Wendian's palms turned violet gold in color, exuding an unexcelled might. Qin Wendian chanted a few incantations as his entire body glowed with a brilliant light, as though he was undergoing a transformation. His palms became even more resplendent, as though they were no longer Qin Wendian's palms, but the hands of God instead. Xiao Lingyue's eyes gleamed with sharpness when she saw this scene. She stared fixedly at Qin Wendian's transformed palms. Qin Wendian's entire body radiated a divine glow. At this moment, an expert from the God Extermination Palace had already rushed out, slashing out a saber strike at Qin Wendian. However, Qin Wendian merely lifted his palms and blasted out. That gigantic palm that resembled God's hand blasted out, directly shattering the saber light. A palm imprint blasted out with enough power to pluck down the stars, sun and moon. With a thunderous boom, that expert from the God Extermination Palace had all his defenses destroyed. His body suffered a crushing blow as he was directly flung through the air. God's hand doesn't refer to single-target attacks. Rather, it refers to using God's hand to unleash all sorts of attacks. At this moment, Xiao Lingyue's gaze couldn't leave Qin Wendian's palm. The light was still as bright as ever, exuding a terrifying might. Chapter 9:16. He really managed to cultivate it and obtained the secret art of ancient Emperor Yi. Xiao Lingyue's countenance was exceptionally cold as she stared at Qin Wendian. Unknowingly, Qin Wendian had actually succeeded in cultivating God's hand. This was a legendary innate technique that had been lost in the immortal realms. He must have obtained the cultivation art of God's hand in the underground palace and had been hiding it from her. Bastard, what a crafty fellow. What a waste of my effort to protect him. The more Xiao Lingyue thought about it, the more furious she felt. Killing intent flashed in her eyes. This is God's hand. Greed Wolf, who was beside Xiao Lingyue, also had a sharp expression on his face. If this was truly the lost secret art of an ancient emperor, it would definitely be sufficient to cause a huge storm. In the city of ancient emperors, the appearance of the ruins of ancient Emperor Yi was already known to everyone. In fact, there were many experts who personally went to the ruins, but none of them managed to comprehend the power of the blood talismans. And right now, when the people in the surroundings saw the might Qin Wendian unleashed, their countenances all turned solemn as they stared ahead. It's rumored that ancient Emperor Yi had a heaven-shaking secret art known as God's hand. Back then, ancient Emperor Yi relied on his towering strength and God's hand to conquer the immortal realms, becoming an ancient emperor. The experts in the surroundings murmured. Even for the experts from the God Extermination Palace and Ji Lanshan who were surrounding Qin Wendian, their countenances stiffened as they stared ahead. What innate technique is this? Ji Lanshan stared at Qin Wendian's transformed palm as he asked. Try it and you will know. Qin Wendian's palm imprint shone with a terrifying violet gold light. The energy from his constellation also flowed unceasingly into the palm imprint as a fearsome violet gold long spear manifested. A pair of wind rock wings appeared behind Qin Wendian's back, making him seem like a descendant of a divinity, exuding the might of a monarch. Is this the power of God's hand? It can unleash any kind of energy. That long spear that appeared seems to be a part of God's hand as well. Xiao Lingyue saw that the long spear was formed from boundless runic light. Terrifying runes flowed unceasingly from Qin Wendian's palm imprint into the long spear, causing runes to flow unceasingly on its surface. At this moment, there was a faint, terrifying roar coming out of Qin Wendian's body. All the power in his body seemed to have been stimulated to its strongest state. Coupled with the amplification from the battle art, he was in the strongest state of excitement. It was even somewhat similar to the state he was in when he used the celestial vanquishing sword. The consumption had reached a terrifying level, and his aura had climbed to its peak state. This was the result of the oracular chant of God's hand. In addition, Qin Wendian knew that this wasn't the complete version of God's hand, it was merely the introductory level. If not, given his cultivation base at the celestial phenomenon realm, how would he be able to unleash the true power of God's hand? That was a lost secret art used by ancient emperors to conquer the world. Even the introductory level was incomparably complicated and contained boundless might. In addition, this God's hand wasn't something Qin Wendian could unleash at any time. He needed to condense a large amount of divine energy in advance, just like how he condensed the gigantic palm imprint in the underground palace. From the start till the end, Qin Wendian had never lied to Xiao Lingyue. Even if he wanted to teach her, it was impossible for Xiao Lingyue to cultivate God's hand. For those who couldn't unravel the mysteries of the underground palace, it was impossible for them to cultivate God's hand. I have to end this as fast as possible. Qin Wendian silently mused. In such a state, even if he had multiple palaces, he wouldn't be able to last long. He didn't know if he would be able to wield this technique after stepping into the 9th level of celestial phenomenon. However, Qin Wendian also understood that if he wanted to wield this technique, he had to first cultivate the spirit refinement method to a certain level. Bzz. A raging wind gusted by. Qin Wendian's body was like a true great rock in the wind, as fast as golden lightning. In just an instant, he dashed towards a genius from the God Extermination Palace. This person was none other than the crowned expert he met before. It was precisely this person's greed that caused him to form a grudge with the God Extermination Palace. The countenance of that crowned expert drastically changed. Back then, he was already unable to defeat Qin Wendian, let alone now that Qin Wendian has cultivated an even more terrifying strength. That crowned expert instantly retreated with explosive speed, yet he only saw Qin Wendian's long spear stabbing out explosively, wanting to penetrate through space. Numerous beams of golden light shot out as a golden spear light shot out from the center of the light, directly piercing through space. That crowned expert roared in rage as a resounding boom echoed out. That crowned expert was forced back as an immortal ranked weapon appeared before him, blocking that attack. However, he didn't feel complacent at all. There was only disappointment on his face. He had used an immortal ranked weapon. This was an extremely shameful thing to do in the city of ancient emperors. Numerous gazes turned to him. That crowned expert only felt a burning sensation on his face. After which, he only heard Qin Wendian speaking, "Are you even worthy of being called a heaven's chosen? You are nothing but trash. You can only bully low-level newbies who just entered the city of ancient emperors. The God Extermination Palace is nothing but a bunch of good-for-nothings." Ji Lanshan unleashed his 1,000 talismans immortal art to its strongest state. His 1,000 talismans sword appeared as he stepped out, rushing towards Qin Wendian. As the palace lord of the God Extermination Palace, an expert on the immortal ascension rankings, he, Ji Lanshan, had to defeat Qin Wendian no matter what. Qin Wendian similarly stared at Ji Lanshan. The wings behind him flickered as he directly rushed towards his opponent. Die! Ji Lanshan roared in rage. The 1,000 talismans sword that seemed capable of annihilating the heavens and earth slashed down from the sky, radiating boundless runic light. However, at the same time, God's hand blasted out with a violet gold long spear. Both attacks contained towering runic light as they directly collided together. Boundless runic inscriptions clashed against each other as a terrifying halo of light tore apart the sky. Qin Wendian's God's hand abruptly blasted out as the violet gold long spear actually broke through the air. There seemed to be terrifying runic light revolving around the long spear as it slashed towards the Thousand Talismans constellation above Ji Lanshan. The Thousand Talismans sword was destroyed, the hearts of the crowd pounded. Qin Wentian was merely a 7th level ascendant, yet he could actually unleash such a terrifying attack when using God's hand? How tyrannical was the ultimate art of ancient Emperor Yi exactly? Inclining their heads, everyone only saw that incomparably terrifying long spears shrouded in boundless runic light directly piercing into the Thousand Talismans constellation in the air. In just an instant, that terrifying halo of light seemed to have suppressed the Thousand Talismans constellation, causing Ji Lanshan to howl in rage, wanting to use the power of his constellation to break it apart. At this moment, Qin Wentian's gigantic body that resembled a wind rock descended. God's hand directly blasted out as a star-seizing palm imprint appeared, containing an apocalyptic might. This attack was extremely similar to the star-seizing palm that Qin Wentian had cultivated in the past. However, it seemed to have undergone many evolutions and was much stronger than before. When the palm imprint blasted out, it felt as though it could really pluck down the sun, moon, and stars, annihilating everything. That godlike runic light seemed to be able to shatter any energy. Boundless light erupted from Ji Lanshan. He roared in rage as runic light flowed around him. Both of his hands pierced through the heavens and earth as an ancient cauldron appeared, destroying all attacks. The might of the countless runic inscriptions shook the heavens, there was nothing that could shake it. Bang! An earth-shaking attack shook the entire space. That terrifying palm imprint shattered the ancient cauldron, but the aftershock waves still lingered in the air. The terrifying palm imprint blasted downwards, slamming into Ji Lanshan. Ji Lanshan explosively retreated, but he still had no way to evade the attack of the palm imprint. With a piercing sound, he coughed out fresh blood that danced in the air. Borrowing the force from the palm imprint, his speed of retreat increased, and in an instant, he was already far away, dissipating a portion of the destructive force. The crowd was in a daze. Qin Wentian borrowed the power of God's hand and actually defeated an expert on the Immortal Ascension rankings, Ji Lanshan. God's hand, how powerful! The spectators were no longer spectators. They were truly stunned by the ultimate art of ancient Emperor Yi that Qin Wentian had unleashed. The geniuses of the City of Ancient Emperors were all extraordinary characters. This Ji Lanshan was an expert on the Immortal Ascension rankings, and although he was ranked in the 300s, he wasn't someone who could jump levels to fight. However, not only did Qin Wentian jump levels to defeat him, he even jumped 2 levels. How tyrannical was the power of God's hand exactly? Ji Lanshan, you won't be able to do it. I have no deep grudge with the God Extermination Palace. It was the people from your God Extermination Palace who bullied us 3 when we first entered the City of Ancient Emperors, wanting to snatch our interspatial rings. This was why I retaliated. After that, you guys continued to provoke me. I, Qin Wentian, will warn you now that if you guys still refuse to give up, I don't care if you are the descendant of an emperor or a disciple of a king. I will show no mercy. Qin Wentian roared in rage. Staring at the high-spirited Qin Wentian, Xiao Lingyue could faintly sense that Qin Wentian had changed into a different person. From the earlier Qin Wentian to the current Qin Wentian who exuded magnificence through the generations, he seemed to have undergone a transformation. Were they really the same person? Capture him. Xiao Lingyue commanded. There was no need for her to say anything more. The experts of the Xiao sect had already surrounded Qin Wentian. Even though Qin Wentian was extremely powerful now, they still had to capture him. Qin Wentian was the one who controlled God's hand. Upon seeing the experts of the Xiao sect nearing, Qin Wentian roared in rage. Before this, the Xiao sect leader wanted to force me to leave the Xiao sect when you saw the experts from the God Extermination Palace wanting to deal with me. Now that I'm no longer a disciple of the Xiao sect, does the Xiao sect leader want to kill me and seize my treasures? Xiao Lingyue coldly snorted, ignoring Qin Wentian. Xiao Lingyue, ever since the first time you invited me to join the Xiao sect, you've done everything in your power to scheme against me. What's laughable is that I, Qin Wentian, have always been honest and frank. Although I've always been on guard against you, my words have never been false. What's laughable is that you've never believed me. It's not that I'm mocking you, but even if the secret art of God's hand was placed in front of you and I told you how to cultivate it, you wouldn't be able to do so. Qin Wendian spoke in a clear voice, as though he wasn't just speaking to Xiaolin Yue. He was speaking to everyone present as well. The secret art of ancient Emperor Yi has been lost for thousands of years. You guys only know how powerful it is, but you have no idea how difficult it is to cultivate. If it's really so easy to comprehend, how can it be called a world-shaking secret art? Many of you are the descendants of immortal kings and emperors, how could you not know how difficult it is to cultivate? The difficulty of cultivating God's hand, think about it yourself. Are you saying that there's no one in the city of ancient emperors who can surpass you in terms of talent? Just when everyone was pondering over Qin Wendian's words, a voice drifted over from afar. It was none other than Xian Xing from the Twin Stars Alliance. At the very least, I'm much stronger compared to you, Xian Xing. Both of us were trapped in the underground palace, and you were waiting for death there, thinking of ways to deal with me. Yet, I was there comprehending the secrets of the divine inscriptions, and eventually, I managed to unravel them and bring everyone away. It's a fact that you, Xian Xing, don't want to admit it. Qin Wendian coldly spoke. To cultivate God's hand, one must first have an extremely high level of attainment in the Tao of divine inscriptions. If one can't even compare to Xian Xing, there's basically no need for such extravagant hopes. When Xian Xing was in the underground palace, he couldn't even comprehend a single bit of the secrets of God's hand. Chapter 9:17. Qin Wendian's voice reverberated through the air, causing the hearts of everyone to tremble when they heard it. Qin Wendian wasn't the only one who entered the underground palace. At that time, Xian Xing, Xiaolin Yue, and the other geniuses had all entered together with him. However, only Qin Wendian managed to cultivate God's hand. The others didn't manage to do so at all. In the Emperor Palace, there were inscriptions left behind for everyone to cultivate. This wasn't an exception for Qin Wendian. Also, Qin Wendian's words should be true. Since Xian Xing and the others were present, their lies were easily exposed. Evidently, Qin Wendian was the one who brought them out of the underground palace. God's hand is so powerful to such an extent, the difficulty of cultivating it must be exceedingly high. Maybe, Qin Wendian was able to cultivate it because of his shocking talent. Someone mused. After this battle, they wondered if his name would appear on the Immortal Ascension rankings. Although Qin Wendian had borrowed the power of God's hand was something that belonged to Qin Wendian himself. It was highly possible for him to be ranked on the Immortal Ascension rankings. It was just that if Qin Wendian was to be ranked on the Immortal Ascension rankings, where would he be ranked? You are truly arrogant to the extreme. Xian Xing's aura turned extremely cold after being insulted. The experts of the Twin Stars Alliance arrived, surrounding Qin Wendian and the others. In this case, although Qin Wendian managed to repel the experts of the God Extermination Palace led by Ji Lanshan, the enemies before him were even more terrifying. Xiaolin Yue led the experts of the Shao sect, while Xian Xing led the experts of the Twin Stars Alliance. No matter how powerful God's hand was, Qin Wendian was only at the 7th level of celestial phenomenon. He wouldn't be able to overturn the heavens. At this moment, the spectators couldn't help but to think that if Qin Wendian had the cultivation base of Xian Xing and Xiaolin Yue, at the 9th level of celestial phenomenon, in addition to the power of God's hand, would he be able to sweep through everything? Given the strength of the God's hand, it would truly be very terrifying. Upon seeing so many powerful enemies staring at him, Qin Wendian's body emitted terrifying rumbling sounds as he expanded once again. His God's hand grew larger as well, but the boundless runic light was still as terrifying as before. Do you plan to come at me together, or one by one? Qin Wendian said proudly, his fighting spirit soaring, as if he was ready to fight. I have no interest in fighting against you. Xian Xing coldly spoke. He directly waved his hands, capture him. Don't take his life. Xiaolin Yue also spoke. Momentarily, the experts from both sides stepped forward, wanting to capture Qin Wendian on the spot. Qin Wendian coldly laughed. A raging wind gusted by as he directly soared up into the air. As he soared up, over 10 experts followed behind him. A destructive might that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth swept through this space. It was too terrifying. However, at this moment, a low-sounding voice rang out from Qin Wendian's mouth. It sounded extremely ancient, causing a raging wind to kick up in the air. Chant of the demonic divinities, ancient will connecting to the heavens, gathering demonic chi from the 8 directions, devouring demonic energy from the starry skies. A surge of demonic chi engulfed the heavens and earth. Qin Wendian's entire body was brimming with demonic chi. That gigantic body of his seemed to be seething with demonic blood, emitting splashing sounds. The eyes of those experts who soared up together with him gleamed with sharpness as they stared at Qin Wendian's silhouette. What a powerful demonic chi! The hearts of everyone trembled. In the air, the terrifying shadow of a great rock appeared, exuding a supreme demonic might. Summon the demonic divinities of the 8 directions, I shall transform into a demon. An ancient chant rang out unceasingly from Qin Wendian's mouth, as though there really was a surge of energy from the starry skies descending. Bzzz. A raging wind gusted as the heavens and earth changed color. Abruptly, darkness appeared in the sky, as though a gigantic creature was blotting out the sun. That was a great rock, incomparably demonic. Its body exuded the aura of a king, like a great sage among rocks. The wings of the great rock spread out, blocking out the sunlight. The hearts of the crowd trembled as they inclined their heads and stared at the sky. What was this? Demonic chi gushed downwards, accompanied by a raging wind. The crowd saw a pair of incomparably lofty demonic eyes, like the sovereign of the heavens. That pair of eyes was as lofty as Qin Wendian's, unexcelled in the world. Clearly, those were the eyes of Qin Wendian. Demonic beast? How can this be possible? Qin Wendian's true form is that of a demonic beast. Many people exclaimed in shock. Did another incomparably majestic demonic beast appear in the city of ancient emperors? He doesn't seem to be a demonic beast. Could it be that he has an extremely powerful demonic transformation technique? If this was the case, Qin Wendian was truly too terrifying. He was able to comprehend God's hand and had the supreme comprehension abilities of humans, the terrifying physique and strength of demonic beasts, as well as the speed of a wind rock. He was simply a perfect incarnation. What was even more terrifying was that the crowd discovered that God's hand was still there. Qin Wendian, who had transformed into the sovereign of the skies, had a violet gold color in his claws. This was the God's hand, incomparably gigantic, as though it could destroy everything. Not long ago, the thoughts of the crowd seemed to have come true in the blink of an eye. Right now, Qin Wendian, who had transformed into a great rock, already had a terrifying aura at the 9th level of celestial phenomenon, in addition to the God's hand. Xiao Lingyue and Xian Xing's gazes froze as well. They stared fixedly at the great rock that appeared in the air. This fellow actually had such a trump card. He isn't a demon. This is a demonic art. He borrowed a powerful external force to transform into a great rock. Greedwolf, who was beside Xiao Lingyue, spoke. Regardless of whether he is a demon or not, his combat prowess right now should be extremely high. Xiao Lingyue spoke in a low voice. Even for her, ranked number 6 on the Immortal Ascension rankings, she didn't dare to underestimate Qin Wendian, who had transformed into a great rock and possessed the God's hand. Given his current state, he shouldn't be able to sustain a prolonged battle. Let's exhaust his energy first. Greedwolf spoke in a light voice. Xiao Lingyue didn't reply, but she didn't deny it either. Bzz. In the air, Qin Wendian, who had transformed into a great rock, flapped his wings, causing a raging wind to kick up. An extremely sharp wind gusted downwards, sweeping towards those experts who were stuck in the air. Qin Wendian coldly spoke, "Since all of you can enter the city of ancient emperors, you are all descendants of immortal kings and emperors. There's no benefit in foolishly sacrificing your lives for others. Such a thing isn't worth it. If I act now, I won't show any mercy. The cold and tyrannical voice sounded like it came from the mouth of a true monarch, containing an unexcelled aura. Some people wavered. Regardless of Shaolin Yue of the Shao sect or Xian Xing of the Twin Stars Alliance, neither of them had any intentions of acting. It was like riding a tiger, it was hard for them to dismount. If they retreated now, it would seem like they were scared off by a single sentence from Qin Wentian. So many geniuses here are only afraid of you. You're just trying to scare us. Make your move, a voice rang out. It was none other than Xia Qianhan of the Shao sect. As the sound of his voice faded, a terrifying aura engulfed the entire sky. Instantly, numerous violet-gold divine arrows shot out, shimmering with golden runic light as they pierced through the air, shooting towards the great rock with lightning speed. Qin Wentian's god's hand grabbed downwards, directly blocking the golden divine arrows. They had no way to shake the god's palm. Bzz. Qin Wentian's wings flapped as he instantly vanished from his original location. Although the wind rock's body was gigantic, a single flap of its wings allowed it to soar through the air. The speed of the wind rock was extremely fast, it had the title of the sovereign of the skies. With a flash, the terrifying body of the great rock directly appeared above the geniuses. The god's hand slammed downwards, wanting to shatter the void. Thunderous rumbling sounds rang out as quite a few geniuses were directly smashed into the ground, causing deep craters to appear on the ground. The bones in their bodies shattered as they screamed in agony. Disperse! An expert roared. The geniuses all unleashed their attacks at the same time. A moment later, gigantic palm imprints and sharp swords slashed out, unceasingly blasting towards the great rock. However, the great rock was like a bolt of lightning, vanishing from sight and reappearing in the air. How fast, it's too fast. The crowd inclined their heads and stared at the sky. Was this the speed of the sovereign of the skies? It could be said to be invincible. Qin Wentian had cultivated many of the techniques of the Great Rock, and he also had the rune bone of the Paragon Wind Rock, allowing him to comprehend the power of the Wind Rock. Although he had transformed into a Great Rock, his strength was incomparably proficient. Bzz. Qin Wentian, who was in the air, flapped his wings once again. A hurricane manifested as a violet gold long spear appeared on the palm imprint. A beam of light flashed as the great rock dove downwards. His long spear pierced out with an incomparably fearsome speed. Upon seeing such an attack, there was basically no one who dared to block it. In an instant, all the geniuses all retreated in all directions. Not a single person dared to face such a spear technique that was executed with God's hand. Such destructive might was simply unimaginable. God's hand. When Xian Xing saw how powerful God's hand was, the obsession in his heart grew even stronger. He had to obtain God's hand no matter what. Even if he had to dig out Qin Wentian's head, he had to obtain God's hand. However, at this moment, Xian Xing suddenly saw a cold gaze shooting towards him. After which, that beam of light that could sweep through everything was rapidly closing in on him. At this instant, Xian Xing only felt his hairs standing on end. He instantly released his constellation, forming an incomparably profound diagram that contained a terrifying divine might. Heavenly Mystic Mirror Art. Xian Xing roared in rage when he saw the destructive attack of the long spear. The Heavenly Mystic Mirror, the ultimate art cultivated by the Xian Emperor, was unleashed. An incomparably profound ancient mirror appeared in the air, containing an incomparably powerful and mysterious might. Boom! Qin Wentian's long spear pierced downwards as a blazing beam of light erupted forth. Xian Xing howled in rage as the ground beneath his feet crumbled unceasingly. That long spear seemed to want to suppress him on the spot. Cracking sounds rang out as cracks appeared on the Heavenly Mystic Mirror. However, Qin Wentian's body was similarly flung through the air. The long spear in his hand had already shattered, and even the god's hand was trembling slightly. Reflect attack. The eyes of Qin Wentian, who was in the form of a great rock, were cold to the extreme. Was this the strength of a genius ranked number 27 on the Immortal Ascension rankings? The son of the Xian Emperor. To think that the heavenly mystic mirror art would actually have such a mystical might. However, because his strength was so strong that it exceeded the limits of the heavenly mystic mirror, the ancient mirror seemed to be on the verge of shattering. Bzz. A raging wind gusted as Qin Wentian's body floated up once more. A long spear appeared in his god's hand, pulsing with destructive light. Xian Xing's body trembled slightly as he stared angrily at the sky. You dare? His heavenly mystic mirror art seemed to have no way to withstand another attack from Qin Wentian. The power of this attack was simply too terrifying, it had reached an extreme. Chapter 9:18. The heavenly mystic mirror art is about to be broken. The hearts of everyone trembled. Any immortal emperor would have their own outstanding points, and they all cultivated terrifying ultimate arts. The heavenly mystic mirror art was one of the strongest ultimate arts of the Xian Emperor. It was able to reflect all attacks, and its might was extremely terrifying during combat. Xian Xing was extremely strong, and he also cultivated the heavenly mystic mirror art. Hence, he was ranked number 27 on the Immortal Ascension rankings. However, no secret arts or techniques could be invincible. Once they met with a stronger attack, the balance would be lost. And when the strength of the attack was too much, even the heavenly mystic mirror art wouldn't be able to withstand it. Just like what happened before their eyes, Xian Xing's heavenly mystic mirror art would only be able to block a single strike from Qin Wentian's god's hand. A second strike from Qin Wentian would most probably destroy his heavenly mystic mirror art. At this moment, Xian Xing stared in anger at Qin Wentian, who was in the air. That gigantic figure of Qin Wentian gave him an immense sense of pressure. This was especially so for that incomparably gigantic god's hand. Runic light illuminated the sky, as though it was bestowed to him by a divinity. It contained supreme offensive power and was truly worthy of being a lost secret art of an ancient emperor. You don't dare. Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with a demonic light as he stared at Xian Xing below. Ever since the underground palace, Xian Xing had wanted to deal with him time and time again. He once said that even if he wanted his life, he would snatch the painting from Qin Wentian. Let alone now that Qin Wentian had already revealed his god's hand, Xian Xing wouldn't hesitate to take Qin Wentian's life for the sake of obtaining the god's hand. As the saying goes, killing is forbidden in the city of ancient emperors. Everyone would hold back, but that was only relative. If there wasn't a life and death grudge between them, everyone would hold back. But if the benefits were too great, when a life and death battle occurred, the rules would be like glass, shattering with a single strike. From afar, the spectators all felt their hearts trembling. Although they were all geniuses, the disparity between Xian Xing, who was ranked number 27, and those who weren't on the Immortal Ascension rankings was simply too great. For those who couldn't even enter the Immortal Ascension rankings, there was no way they could withstand the attacks of Qin Wentian in the form of a great rock. This was why they had to flee in all directions. As a result, Xian Xing had to face Qin Wentian alone. A burst of intense light erupted forth, Qin Wentian's great rock form transformed into a beam of light. Demonic qi swept across the sky as a hurricane tore apart the void. Yet another violet gold long spear shot out. This spear strike was so powerful that even ghosts and gods would weep. Boundless runic light gushed forth, pressing towards Xian Xing. At this instant, Xian Xing was in the eye of the tempest, swaying in the wind and rain, as though he could be destroyed at any moment. Xian Xing's strength was released to the extreme. His palm transformed into an ancient mirror as boundless astral light and runic inscriptions frenziedly flowed into it. The heaven mystic mirror art released an incomparably dazzling light. Between the great rock and Xian Xing, there was a terrifying ancient mirror. However, everyone could still feel how insignificant Xian Xing was. Bang! The long spear slammed into the surface of the mirror once again. The god's hand trembled slightly, one could see how terrifying its might was. But at the same time, the sound of shattering rang out unceasingly. Finally, the ancient mirror broke apart. That destructive long spear continued its attack, wanting to kill Xian Xing on the spot. Upon seeing this scene, the gazes of everyone froze. Even Xiao Linyue felt a chill in her heart. Qin Wendian actually dared to do this, wanting to kill Xian Xing. Boom. Qin Wendian's long spear slammed into Xian Xing. Many people trembled, not daring to believe this scene would happen. But at this moment, a terrifying aura erupted forth from Xian Xing. It was as though an illusory palm directly grabbed hold of Qin Wendian's long spear. Xian Xing's body was jolted to the ground as he coughed out fresh blood. And from his body, a terrifying shadow could be seen. This was the silhouette of an extremely imposing expert. Just by standing there, he already exuded the might of an emperor, unexcelled in the world. Brat, this is the city of ancient emperors. Why must you be so ruthless? Show mercy wherever possible. That imposing figure stared at Qin Wendian as he spoke. He stared at Qin Wendian as he slowly spoke. Xian Emperor. The hearts of the people in the surroundings trembled. This shadow must be the Xian Emperor's appearance. As the son of the Xian Emperor, Xian Xing naturally had the immortal sense of the Xian Emperor in his body. You should say this to him. Xian Xing is too overbearing. If I don't kill him, he wants to kill me. Qin Wendian stared at the Xian Emperor as he spoke. The Xian Emperor glanced at Qin Wendian's palm as a look of surprise appeared on his face. Scram! The Xian Emperor's palm trembled as the spear shattered. Qin Wendian only felt his god's hand being struck by a terrifying force. His gigantic body was directly smashed into the void as his expression was incomparably cold. Against the immortal sense of the Xian Emperor, he had no way to resist at all. Most probably, if the Xian Emperor wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as flipping his palm. Qin Wendian stabilized his body. His god's hand had already been shattered. His gigantic eyes turned incomparably cold. Although the Xian Emperor's attack only shattered his god's hand, he still wanted to cut off his path of retreat. Impudent! At this moment, terrifying black clouds appeared in the sky, churning frenziedly, as though a storm was brewing. A towering might bore down from the clouds as a pair of eyes appeared in the air, exuding a towering demonic might. That pair of eyes stared straight at the Xian Emperor. You dare to interfere in the city of ancient emperors? An incomparably imposing voice rang out. The Xian Emperor stared at the sky as he spoke. I'm only a strand of immortal sense protecting my son. I didn't kill anyone, nor did I interfere in the matters of the city of ancient emperors. I'll take my leave now. As the sound of his voice faded, the Xian Emperor coldly stared at Qin Wendian in the air. After that, his strand of immortal sense directly dissipated as though it had never appeared before. Humph! A cold voice rang out in the air as the terrifying storm gradually dissipated. However, this scene caused the hearts of everyone to tremble. The city of ancient emperors was truly incomparably mysterious. Without permission, even immortal kings and emperors wouldn't be able to enter. Even immortal emperors weren't allowed to interfere in the matters of the city of ancient emperors. Xian Xing stood up. Although he was injured by that attack earlier, his father's immortal sense appeared and blocked the vast majority of the attack for him. Hence, he wasn't seriously injured. Right now, his eyes were staring at Qin Wendian in the air as his killing intent was incomparably sharp. Xian Xing. From afar, a figure could be seen flying over. Xian Yang's speed was extremely fast, bringing the experts of the Twin Stars Alliance with him. Big brother. Xian Xing pointed to the great rock in the air when he saw Xian Yang. This man has obtained ancient Emperor Yi's secret art, God's Hand. Capture him. Xian Yang is here. This time around, Qin Wendian is in danger. When everyone saw Xian Yang rushing over, they all faintly felt that Qin Wendian was in for it. What sort of character was Xian Yang? He was ranked number 4 in the Immortal Ascension rankings. His heavenly mystic mirror art was many times stronger compared to Xian Xing. Even God's Hand might be able to block it. Let alone the fact that Qin Wendian's God's Hand was shattered by the immortal sense of the Xian Emperor. It was unknown whether or not he could reform it again. Those who could rank within the top 10 of the Immortal Ascension rankings were all extraordinary characters. They were true geniuses at the very peak, with shocking strength and secret arts. The strength of the number 4 Xianyang was definitely unimaginable. Right. Xianyang nodded. His body slowly soared up into the air, exuding an unexcelled aura. His entire body circulated with a glass-like light as the power of his bloodline was released. His entire person turned translucent, resembling a mirror image that could vanish at any moment. His constellation also appeared. It was actually an ancient mirror with flowing light circulating around it. Xianyang's heavenly mystic mirror art has been cultivated to an astonishing level, much stronger compared to Xianxing. This secret art is extremely unique. Xianyang used it in his attacks and defeated many geniuses. In the city of ancient emperors, he's an existence akin to a king. Someone mumbled. If Qin Wendian could still condense God's hand, he might be able to fight against Xianyang. But if he couldn't condense it, he would die for sure. Qin Wendian floated in the air. His God's hand was shattered by the Xian Emperor's immortal sense, and it was true that he couldn't condense it again. This was ancient Emperor Yi's secret art, God's hand, a truly terrifying innate technique. How could it be so easy to cultivate? Even in its initial form, he needed the help of the spirit refinement method before he could use it. Although he was the only one who had successfully cultivated this secret art, there were still limitations to it. In the future, he still needed to be more proficient in it. This Xian Emperor should have seen how powerful God's hand is and intentionally destroyed it with a single strike. Qin Wendian silently mused. This Xian Emperor was as expected of an immortal emperor character. Although he was restricted by the city of ancient emperors and didn't directly injure him, he still understood what was best for his descendants. Xianyang, ranked number 4 on the Immortal Ascension rankings. Qin Wendian stared at his opponent. Being ranked number 4 meant that Xianyang's strength was at the peak of the entire immortal realms. You are courting death. Xianyang stared at the great rock before him. His constellation shone with boundless light as he pressed his finger downwards. At this instant, the transparent mirror-like constellation shone with a golden luster. Beams of light directly pierced into Qin Wendian's eyes, accompanied by a boundless killing intent. The crowd only saw several beams of intense light appearing in the air. Each beam of light was like a mirror, shining with a violet gold luster. It was so blinding that it could hurt the eyes of those who looked at it, as well as containing a destructive might. Bzz. Qin Wendian's great rock body transformed into a beam of light as he soared up into the air. However, the beams of light continued shooting towards him, and any one of them could kill. How terrifying was the speed of light! It was actually able to chase after Qin Wendian's body. If Xianyang's opponent was a genius that wasn't ranked in the Immortal Ascension rankings, he would have been instantly killed. How powerful! The people below stared at the sky. How could a true genius at the peak be weak? Do you only know how to dodge? Xianyang roared. After which, the claws of the great rock slashed out, transforming into a gigantic palm that blotted out the skies. The beams of light that shot towards him were all destroyed. Bzz. A raging wind gusted as Qin Wendian directly rushed towards Xianyang. As he moved forward, his sharp claws unceasingly slashed out, colliding with the beams of light. Qin Wendian's attacks are also excessively powerful. Even if he doesn't rely on God's hand, his current strength is already sufficient to rank within the top 100 of the Immortal Ascension rankings. Many people silently mused. Chapter 9:19. Xianyang stared at Qin Wendian, yet the expression on his face was so calm that it was terrifying. Astral light shot out unceasingly, and although they were all destroyed by Qin Wendian's palm imprints, it still caused Qin Wendian to feel extremely unhappy. Bzz. A translucent long spear appeared, as though it was birthed from the constellation. Xianyang stretched his hand out and grabbed it. This gigantic spear appeared in his palm, exuding a solemn and serene aura, causing everyone to feel the majesty of a supreme genius. Lingyue, Qin Wendian will lose for sure in this battle. We cannot allow Xianyang to obtain Qin Wendian so easily. What should we do? Greedwolf spoke to Xiaolin Yue, who was beside him. He was one of the top rankers in the Immortal Ascension rankings and was very clear on the disparity between Qin Wendian and Xian Yang. If Qin Wendian had the god's hand, he would be able to fight against Xian Yang because his attacks were incomparably powerful. But without the god's hand, Qin Wendian's rock transformation only increased his speed and strength, but not his comprehension. His constellation was clearly weaker when compared to a peak-level mystic sun celestial phenomenon ascendance. The amount of power he could borrow from his constellation was also far inferior compared to Xian Yang. Although he could increase his strength by transforming into a great rock, he couldn't. Also, there was the matter of comprehension. For those geniuses ranked within the top 10 of the Immortal Ascension rankings, they all had their own unique insights. They already wanted to step into the immortal realm and comprehend the power of immortals. Although they hadn't reached the immortal realm yet, they had already grasped the embryonic form of immortal energy. Such an advantage would be extremely destructive to Qin Wendian. How could the top rankers of the Immortal Ascension rankings have an undeserved reputation? Hence, from Greedwolf's point of view, even if Qin Wendian borrowed the power of his great rock transformation, he would still lose for sure. Let's wait a little longer. Even if the two of us join forces, we might not be able to defeat Xian Yang. Xiaolin Yue spoke. She wasn't arrogant at all. For those at their level, they all had secret arts that far surpassed ordinary geniuses. Xian Yang had already utilized the heavenly mystic mirror art to the pinnacle of the celestial phenomenon realm, infusing it into all of his attacks. Each and every one of his strikes were able to create a backlash force. This also meant that when you fought against Xian Yang, if you attacked him, you would suffer a backlash from your own energy. The stronger your attack, the stronger the backlash. From this, one could very well imagine how difficult it was to fight against Xian Yang. If not, how could Xian Yang be ranked number 4 on the Immortal Ascension rankings, suppressing her and the other female? Yes. Greedwolf nodded his head. In the air, Qin Wendian descended with terrifying speed. His palms directly grabbed towards Xian Yang, and as his claw descended, the shadow of a great rock manifested in the air. The rock let out a terrifying screech, wanting to tear Xian Yang's body apart. Before this attack, Xian Yang's body seemed extremely tiny and inconsequential. But the aura he exuded made him seem like a giant. The long spear in his hand slashed out as boundless astral energy shone upon it. Countless beams of light appeared in the air. Qin Wendian found it hard to even open his eyes. Bang! An incomparably powerful force blasted into Qin Wendian's sharp claw. He retreated like the wind, like a true wind rock, retreating far away. His gigantic claw trembled slightly, and as expected, it was the same as Xian Xing's attack. At the same time when the attack was rebounded, there was also a terrifying burst of energy gushing forth. Under the stacking of these energies, Qin Wendian's sharp claw felt like it was about to shatter. Qin Wendian glanced at Xian Yang's silhouette, silently musing that Xian Yang was indeed worthy of being ranked number 4 on the Immortal Ascension rankings. He released his battle art as boundless runic light circulated around the body of the great rock. His eyes shone with incomparable sharpness, as though they could penetrate through people. His constellation shone in the sky, shining upon him. Bzzz. A resplendent arc appeared in the air as Qin Wendian rushed out once more. He was as swift as the wind, and only a beam of light could be seen. Xian Yang still stood in the air, staring at the silhouette of the great rock. The power of his constellation frenziedly gushed forth, yet at this moment, he saw Qin Wendian completely ignoring the might of his constellation. When the destructive beams of light blasted into the body of the great rock, crisp sounds of collision rang out as they collided with the runic light on the surface of the great rock's body. What a terrifying defense! The hearts of the spectators trembled. The great rock was a demonic beast, the sovereign of the skies. Its speed and strength were terrifying, and its defense wasn't weak either. In addition to Qin Wendian's battle art, as well as the fiend god body refinement art, Qin Wendian's defense had truly reached a terrifying level. It was basically impossible to deal with him using only the might of his constellation. Qi. A palm strike capable of ripping apart the void blasted out. Xian Yang directly stabbed out with his spear, and with a thunderous boom, Qin Wentian's silhouette vanished completely. Only the howling of the hurricane could be heard. Bang, bang, bang. Next, terrifying sounds of collision rang out unceasingly. That incomparably great rock's speed was too fast, akin to a bolt of lightning, unceasingly hacking towards Xian Yang. Xian Yang's attack speed was also extremely fast, and it was unknown how many times the two of them collided in that short instant. Time and time again, Xian Yang's entire body was akin to the silhouette of a great rock, blotting out the sun as his demonic qi towered up into the heavens. Although Xian Yang's strength was terrifying, such an endless number of collisions still caused him to feel somewhat impatient. How fast, this speed is simply unparalleled. Even if Qin Wentian is defeated, if he wants to leave, even Xian Yang wouldn't be able to stop him. The hearts of the spectators trembled when they saw the earth-shattering collisions in the air. Abruptly, a marvelous aura gushed forth from Xian Yang as boundless astral light revolved around him. His long spear stabbed out once more. The speed of this spear seemed to have slowed down, but if one looked carefully, they would be able to see that when this spear pierced out, with Xian Yang as the center, the entire space seemed to be filled with a mysterious law energy, as if the entire void was a mirror. When the long spear pierced out, it directly descended in all directions. Xian Yang's spear was clearly piercing forward, yet the spear light was refracted in all directions. Bang! Behind Xian Yang, Qin Wentian's palm imprint smashed down, bringing with it a towering destructive might. However, a crisp sound rang out as beams of mirror-like light shot over, refracting unceasingly. Qin Wentian only felt that his sharp claws were withstanding an incomparably fearsome force. That was the force of his own attack. Not only that, the force of Qin Wentian's attack wasn't limited to just one level. Qin Wentian's strength seemed to have overlapped with each other, akin to a tsunami of attacks gushing towards him. With a thunderous boom, Qin Wentian, who was in the form of a great rock, was flung far away as he coughed out fresh blood. Immortal law energy. Below, the geniuses inclined their heads and stared at this scene with shock in their hearts. As expected, the geniuses ranked at the top of the Immortal Ascension rankings not only had towering attacks, they had also comprehended a strand of law energy, fusing it into their attacks. How terrifying! Multi-layered rebounding force. Although Qin Wentian was in the form of a great rock, he was still at a disadvantage in terms of cultivation base. Also, other than God's hand, all the other innate techniques he cultivated couldn't be compared to the Mystic Emperor's ultimate art, the heavenly mystic mirror art. In addition, Xian Yang had also comprehended a strand of immortal law energy. In this case, as long as he couldn't break the heavenly mystic mirror art, no matter how strong his attacks were, they would all be reflected back to him. Unless he had an absolute advantage like when he used God's hand against Xian Xing, he wouldn't be able to break the heavenly mystic mirror art with brute force. Qin Wentian, who was in the form of a great rock, was still retreating. After fighting for so long, his energy consumption rate was terrifying. In addition to the fact that he had encountered the ultimate attack earlier, he felt extremely fatigued. All of this, from the moment the Xian Emperor unleashed that ruthless strike, the ending was already set in stone. A casual strike from the Xian Emperor, although it didn't violate the rules of the City of Ancient Emperors, it still managed to break his god's hand. Senior brother, be careful. At this moment, a roar rang out. It was none other than the voice of Jun Mengchen. Qin Wentian abruptly felt a sense of danger descending upon him. Behind him, there were several terrifying auras gushing towards him. At the same time, Xian Yang also stepped out, his speed as fast as lightning as he dashed towards Qin Wentian. Bzz. Qin Wentian's wings abruptly flapped, forcibly stopping his retreat. After which, he flapped his wings again and soared up into the sky. Grand freezing art. At this instant, a shocking wave of ice chi froze the heavens and earth. The entire space was covered in frost. Qin Wentian's gigantic body instantly froze, transforming into an ice sculpture. Not only him, the entire space he was in seemed to be frozen as well. However, the wind rock was still rushing upwards. Bang! A terrifying wave of demonic chi gushed forth, shattering the ice sculpture inch by inch. At this instant, Greedwolf appeared on the back of the great rock and directly stabbed out with his finger. In that instant, the destructive might of the chaotic world pierced into Qin Wentian's body. The terrifying killing might ravaged Qin Wentian's body, causing him to feel as though his entire body was about to be torn apart. You won't be able to escape. Shaolin Yue's cold voice drifted over. Another wave of ice energy descended, causing the expressions of the experts below to turn numb. Xian Yang, ranked number 4 on the Immortal Ascension rankings. Shaolin Yue, ranked number 6 on the Immortal Ascension rankings. Greedwolf, number 12 on the Immortal Ascension rankings. These three could all be said to be supreme geniuses, supreme experts. Now that they acted together against Qin Wentian, one could very well imagine how terrifying the killing power would be. This battle was truly tragic. Qin Wentian had cultivated the god's hand, how could these people not do their best to capture him? But now that he was in the form of a wind rock, his speed was simply too fast. If they wanted to capture Qin Wentian, they would have to heavily injure him first. Shaolin Yue's figure descended. Her palms were infused with the terrifying power of ice, growing stronger and stronger as she once again blasted out towards Qin Wentian's gigantic body. Her methods were extremely ruthless. Senior brother. Jun Mengchen's eyes were bloodshot. He soared up into the air, Zi Qingxian also did the same. However, the experts of the Shao sect directly blasted out palm imprints, obstructing them. Scram! Jun Mengchen stared at Shaolin Yue's palms as the veins on his entire body bulged. This attack of hers would most probably cause his senior brother to suffer a devastating injury. Finally, Shaolin Yue's attack blasted out. Jun Mengchen let out a terrifying roar that shook the heavens and earth. Bang! The power of ice finally blasted out, but it didn't manage to land a hit on Qin Wentian's body. The power of ice was frenziedly being torn apart as an intense golden light appeared in the air, frenziedly tearing apart the power of ice. Within that golden light, a supreme silhouette could be seen.